question with former Tory Cabinet Minister Justine Greening, Labour MP Darren Paffy, former Tory advisor Tom Skinner and Lib Dem MP Pippa Heylings. And at 9, Baroness Biban Kidron will be here to take your calls on online safety.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 7 o'clock, Iran's ambassador to the UK has told LBC his country is not at war with Britain. The government's boosting defence operations in the region following US-Israeli strikes, with HMS Dragon due to set sail in the next few days. Speaking on Tonight with Andrew Marr, Saeed Ali Musavi has denied Tehran is responsible for a drone strike on an RAF base in Cyprus.
Iran is a peace-lover country, and so we do not have any war with anybody. We are defending ourselves against the aggressors. My advice to not only Keir Starmer, but also for the British political establishment, please increase your knowledge regarding for the Iranian people, Iranian culture. The Iranian people do not have any hostility with the British people.
Defence Secretary John Healey has been updating MPs in the Commons on the state of Akrotiri following the attack earlier this month. He visited the base last week.
I was subjected to the daily air sirens that they face. I saw the impact that Iranian proxy drone had caused. And I asked the Commander of British Forces, General Tom Buick, do you need anything more from us back in Britain? And he said to me, no, I've been given everything I have asked for.
Meanwhile, Downing Street is playing down suggestions that a British aircraft carrier is being prepared to be deployed to the region. The Chancellor says she is ready to support the release of oil reserves as war in the Middle East drives up prices. The cost of a barrel of Brent crude climbed above $100 for the first time since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The conflict is already having a knock-on effect on fuel prices. Rachel Reeves has told MPs the government is determined to protect households.
A rapid de-escalation in the Middle East remains the best way to protect us from rising energy bills. But as the situation continues to unfold, my priorities will continue to be helping families with the cost of living and protecting the public finances.
MPs are debating whether under 16 should be banned from a social media on safety grounds. Opponents fear it would push them to darker parts of the internet. Lord Nash, a former Conservative Education Minister, put forward the original amendment. On our latest online safety day, he told Andrew Marr the critics who say the idea is impractical are wrong.
Some social media sites that just say, tick a box, what your age is. So, of course, they've been getting around it. But if we have highly effective age verification, which is what my amendment calls for, that would work. That all the tech companies tell me that can be done.
You can find out more about our online safety day on the LBC app. The government says an extra 2,500 new dentists could be registered every year before the end of the decade. Ministers have announced plans to improve the availability of exams overseas dentists are required to take before they can practice in the UK. Health Minister Stephen Kinnock's been asked whether it undermines efforts to reduce immigration.
3/4 of the backlog, the 8,000 who are waiting to do this exam, they're already resident in the UK. Some of them are working as dental nurses or therapists or hygienists. But I think we also would recognise that the vast majority of the British public want to see people coming into our country who are highly skilled.
He's also announced the number of places at dental school is increasing from 810 to 860 from 2027. And Glasgow Central Station will remain closed for a second day following a devastating fire at a nearby building. A number of businesses were destroyed when the 19th century building partially collapsed last night. Disruption is expected to last for a number of days. In the city, the FTSE 100 has closed down 35 points at 10,249. The pound buys $1.33 and €1.15. LBC weather, much of the UK will be cloudy tonight. Some scattered showers for the north and west, a low of 3. Largely cloudy for most tomorrow, though there will be some sunshine in the southeast. Patchy rain for parts of the northwest, a high of 15 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Amelia Cox.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening. Welcome to the programme. It's Iain Dale with you until 10. It's 4 minutes past 7. Now, there are so many different aspects to the war in Iran that we could talk about tonight. But I think given the rise in oil prices, and that it's been quite a dramatic rise, because in the first few days, it only went up sort of by a few percentage points. But today, the price of oil reached $119 a barrel. Now, it's gone back to about 93 at the moment, but that's still quite a substantial rise from the $75 that it was only a week ago. So I thought we'd talk about what impact this might have on the cost of living crisis, because there is no doubt, and Rachel Reeves has said herself today, that inflation is going to go up inevitably, not just because of the rise in oil, but if the fact that ships are being blocked from going through the Straits of Hormuz, who knows what other shipping problems there might be over the next few months. We remember about the lack of supply a few years ago when the Suez Canal was blocked by that ship that we didn't run aground, but it blocked the canal for quite a long time. So all the world's supply chains basically went up the spout. That meant that we couldn't get hold of goods. That meant that prices increased. Are we about to see that again? When I announced what we were doing on the programme on Twitter earlier, somebody said, could you be any more scaremongering if you tried? It's not scaremongering. I mean, it's a fact that if there is an oil crisis, fuel prices will go up, whether it's petrol, diesel, domestic fuel, costs for industry, everything will go up. And if costs for industry go up, then that has to be passed on to the consumer. So the big question that I have for you is this. Is this something that you think that the government has to do something about? Because if you remember back in 2022, when there was a massive energy crisis after the invasion, or the Russian invasion of Ukraine, energy prices went through the roof. And I suppose, apart from the mini budget, the biggest thing that Liz Truss will be remembered for was the energy rescue package that she brought in, which cost a huge amount of money. And she was essentially given a lot of praise for doing that, for helping the consumer. And I wonder whether you think that this is something that this government might be forced to do, and what impact that would have on their economic policy, and what impact would that have on you? Now, I don't think anything is going to be done initially. Personally, I don't think anything should be done initially. But at what point do you think the government will feel forced to step in? Should it even step in at any point? 0345 6060 973. Malaki Chambray, our deputy editor, is with us. She's been monitoring what the various politicians have been saying today about the future economic impact of this war. Particularly Rachel Reeves has been in the Commons today. I think she's been speaking to her G7 counterparts.
Indeed. So Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, speaking to the G7 finance ministers earlier, and she said in her update to MPs in the Commons that they'd agreed on three things. Number one, to push for de-escalation of conflict, effectively saying that was the best way to ensure that inflation didn't rise, which she said it's likely to do in the coming months. Number two was guaranteeing security of shipping in the Straits of Hormuz. That was what you were just talking about, which could seriously impact oil prices and is already doing so. And number three, supporting a coordinated release of international oil reserves to stop soaring or prevent or dampen at least soaring prices. And we can hear a little bit of Rachel Reeves speaking to MPs as she warned that prices for consumers are likely to go up because of the war.
The economic impact of the situation in the Middle East will depend, of course, on its severity and its duration. The movements that we have already seen are likely to put upward pressure on inflation in the coming months. But I also want to confirm to the House that our financial markets are functioning, and I'm in regular touch with the Governor of the Bank of England. This afternoon, I spoke with G7 finance ministers, setting out my priorities for the international cooperation needed. First, calling for immediate de-escalation and a return to the diplomatic process. Second, we must guarantee the security of vessels passing through the Strait of Hormuz. Third, I stand ready to support a coordinated release of collective International Energy Agency oil reserves. And fourth, the UK will play its part as the global hub of maritime insurance. And I am meeting with the Chair of Lloyd's of London later today, where we will discuss how best to support the continued passage of maritime trade.
That Rachel Reeves speaking in the Commons earlier. She also said, Iain, that the Treasury will fund the net additional costs of operations in the Middle East, not the Ministry of Defence. So she's basically saying that that money will come out of her budget rather than the Ministry of Defence's budget too. And there were questions, and I think there'll be increasing number of questions about the full fuel duty rise, which is planned, and whether or not that will actually go ahead as a result of this crisis. That was something her opposite number for the Tories, Mel Stride, brought up. So I think there are questions about whether or not that could be ditched. But this is really difficult for them, really, really difficult for them, because cost of living we've had over and over and over again. This year, that was their big priority, to get down the cost of living for Britons. And I think this crisis could prove to be a disaster on that front, and I think they are completely aware of that.
Do you think there is a lot of pressure from Labour backbenchers on the Chancellor to really come up with some sort of rescue package for consumers? Maybe not now. I mean, I think it's probably too early now, but maybe in a week or two's time, when people are starting to see the effect in their shopping baskets.
It's a really interesting question. I think you're right to say it's too early at the moment. I think it is too early today or this week for those questions and that pressure to begin. But I think, as you say, once people start to notice it, I think that pressure will begin. But what I'm picking up from Labour MPs at the moment, Iain, is actually they are very, very pleased with Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister's handling of this so far. They're pleased with how it's playing on the doorstep, him standing up, as they see it, to Donald Trump, the US president. And I think that is their main focus at the moment. And actually looking at the polling among British people, it was 49% of Britons were opposed to the invasion, to the conflict beginning from Donald Trump. And that actually in the last week has gone up to 59% opposed to it.
Aggie, thank you very much indeed. Well, let's have a word with Adam Bell, former head of energy strategy for the UK government's Department of Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, who's now a partner focusing on energy for the consultancy company Stonehaven. Adam, very good evening to you. Do you think the government will be looking at options over the next few weeks to come to the rescue of the already beleaguered consumer?
I'm sure somewhere both in the Treasury and the Energy Department are officials desperately burying away at options they could take and trying to figure out what they could do that involves the least cost and the least disruption to consumers as well. Their options are not extensive. Right now, there's not really a justification for moving. The markets have barely changed. Bills won't change significantly until July, when the next phase of the price cap comes in. But they will be certainly thinking about that point and what happens then if this conflict endures.
Well, some consumers are already being affected by the rise in diesel and petrol prices, aren't they? I mean, if you look at where I live, it's 10p a litre already. It's probably likely to go up beyond that. For people who have to drive a certain distance each week, each month, there are going to be considerable costs to them, assuming they don't have an electric car.
That is absolutely correct. If you do have a petrol or diesel car, you will see some increases at the pump already. The question is how for and how long they will last for. Certainly, we're not in a position yet where you'll start to see supply tightness. No one's going to run out of petrol anytime soon. But that short-term impact, is it appropriate for the government to jump in to cover a crisis that might be over in a couple of weeks? That's not clear, because there's a cost to setting up these schemes. There's a cost to delivering them. They'll want to hold off until they're certain that this is enduring, which might be next week at this rate, given that how the conflict has progressed so far.
If this conflict does last a reasonably long time, and there will be implications for domestic fuel bills, do you think that the government are likely to look back on what Liz Truss did in 2022 and think, well, we may need to do a version of that? And actually, were you in government at that time and part of the planning process for that?
Thankfully, I just left government before then.
Timing is everything, Adam, isn't it?
Anti-crisis. But I think they'll look at what happened then. I think there is a failing since that crisis. Government did provide support to everybody through the energy price guarantee, but also provided a limited amount of targeted support. I think if the prices for energy bills don't go up too much, they should be looking to target it a little bit more heavily this time round, rather than giving a guarantee to absolutely everybody. We haven't seen the sort of price spikes that we saw during the 22 crisis, but a period of sustained higher prices means that some people will lose out. And given the government has very limited fiscal headroom, they should concentrate their support on them.
I mean, when do you think is going to be the crunch time? I mean, if this bombing of Iran continues for another, say, month, which it's possible that it could do, are we likely to have seen some substantial effects on the cost of living by then, or do you think that it is going to go much further into the future?
So we're building up costs now that we'll pay for in the future. People's bills are protected by the price cap from April up until July. So price effects on energy, quite apart from fuel, won't manifest until then. The big question is, yes, the conflict might end soon, but what's going to be the state of the Middle East infrastructure after the conflict? Israel has already bombed some Iranian oil stores and refineries. Iran has threatened to strike back at other Gulf facilities. If they do so, and if these facilities are left in ruins, it will take months to repair them. And that will have a hangover effect for certainly until the end of the year.
Gary sent in a text saying, Ian, I normally pay £300 for 500 litres of heating oil. My local supplier has just quoted me £850 for 500 litres. That is an incredible amount, isn't it? Given what we know the prices are at the moment.
It is, yes. And people on heating oil were excluded from the energy price guarantee last time, but they are the ones who are being affected now because the squeeze is less on gas and much more so on oil. I know government is thinking about whether they need to do anything novel for consumers who are relying on oil to heat their homes. Luckily, we're getting into the spring now. So again, hopefully people won't be affected too badly, but there will still be a cost.
Adam, thank you very much. That's Adam Bell from Stonehaven. Right, we'll come to your calls in a minute. There are quite a lot of calls coming in on this, which I think demonstrates one thing, because sometimes when you pick a subject like this, you wonder how popular it will be on the phones. But the fact that a lot of you are ringing in already demonstrates to me that this is a real concern for people listening at the moment, and that you're having sort of decided what your household budgets would be for this year. They might all go up in smoke soon. What responsibility does the government have in these circumstances to come to the consumer's rescue? 0345 6060 973. You're listening to LBC. I'm Iain Dale. It's 16 minutes past 7.
This is LBC.
Train to Chichester. Flasks filled, snacks packed, all ready for Maisie's first stargazing adventure.
Come on, Maisie. Follow everyone up to the top of that hill.
Oh, look, that one's the plough.
Shooting star.
Wow. Made it. Last train back and feeling cosmic. And it seems we have an astronaut in the making. Download the Southern Railway app to book kids' tickets for £2 on off-peak journeys. Southern Railway, where every stop is a story.
What's the best present you ever got for your birthday? I bet it wasn't as life-changing as £1 million. Every week with the birthday draw, there's £1 million to be won. And you can enter from as little as £1 or via post. Enter by midnight on Sunday and your special day could win you £1 million. Visit thebirthdaydraw.com. Is it your lucky day? From Global and ITV. 18 plus, UK only, no purchase necessary.
Hi, I'm looking for a pair of jeans.
Right. Low slung, slouchy, wide leg, bower leg, curved leg, flared, straight or skinny.
Blue?
Fashion. It's hard to keep on top of. Other things, like the upcoming changes to renting, are a bit easier. As a landlord, you will need to get on top of these important changes. They will affect how you manage your tenancies. Act now. Read the guidance at gov.uk/renting is changing.
Leading Britain's conversation. Iain Dale. Alexa, send a comment to LBC.
18 minutes past 7 on LBC. Let's go to Guy in Thirsk. Hello, Guy.
Hello there. Yeah, I've got a bit of a double whammy for me. I've got heating oil for my house, which we have no gas supply locally. So I'm not looking forward to having to top that up again, just like previously mentioned. And my belief is that the government could, without reducing their revenues significantly over what they are at the moment, when the price of fuels goes up, so does the tax revenue in fuel duties and VAT.
Yeah.
And I believe that there's some scope for manoeuvre from the government to be able to reduce temporarily either fuel duties on road fuels and domestic heating, oil, or reduce the VAT element to try to stabilise the price so to shield us consumers from the worst ravages of that. And in relation to the road fuel duty, that has a significant effect on the cost of road fuels on the distribution of all goods, or almost all goods, should we say. Just about everything that we purchase through shops is distributed by road at some point, and that cost will be passed on to us. So to stabilise the cost of living, then I think that's an option that the government should explore.
Well, I suspect they will be exploring that. Of course, whenever they cut the cost of whether it's fuel duty or whether if they reduced VAT, so they cut VAT for a temporary period of time on fuel duty, that will reduce government revenues, and that therefore means they either have to borrow more, tax more, or sort of replenish it at some point. But you are right. If the cost of fuel goes up quite a lot, I mean, I don't think anybody would necessarily argue that just because it's got say it went up to £1.70 a litre for diesel. I don't think anybody would seriously argue that the government would therefore have to cut 30p off it. But even if they only cut, say, 15p off it, they're still making more money, aren't they, as you pointed out, of the extra fuel duty. So that could effectively be used as a bit of a subsidy. We'd all still suffer to an extent if we have a diesel or petrol car, but at least the pain would be a little bit less.
Yeah, my preference would be for the fuel duty element rather than the VAT to be adjusted. The reason for that being commercial operators, haulage companies basically, are not able to reclaim the VAT. So cutting the VAT wouldn't have any effect on them really, but the costs to increase distribution costs could be, I think, adjusted out of the fuel duty temporarily. I'm not suggesting that there's a need to go back to an era where we've got no fuel duty, although us drivers would think it was marvellous. That's not really sustainable for revenue, but the fuel duty element is easily adjustable, I believe, and also because the overall costs have still gone up, the revenues overall are likely to stay fairly static to what they were prior to the start of the price hikes.
Guy, thank you very much indeed. Let's go to John in West Hampstead. Hello, John.
Oh, hi there, Dale. So are you looking for a mathematical solution to your wokeism? Is that what you're trying to do this evening?
My wokeism?
Well, your left-wing agenda and, view of life.
Sorry, how have I got a left-wing agenda?
I need a mathematical solution.
How have I got a left-wing agenda?
Well, you do, obviously. I mean, the answer is we all have to muck in and get behind Israel and America and finish the regime in Iran that controls the Strait of Hormuz, which is causing you the problem.
Which is exactly what I said last week. How is that wokey? Because if I'm a wokey, you're a wokey.
I'm not a wokey at all.
Okay, well, I fail to understand why you're accusing me of it when I kind of took the view that you're expressing for the whole of last week.
And has it changed?
No.
Oh, in which case I'm okay, then I take it back. But there seems to be on LBC
Got there in the end.
a wokeism agenda going on within LBC. You're so concerned about international law that you forget that you need fuel. And therein lies the problem.
No, therein lies a big problem in your brain, frankly, because LBC has a range of presenters, some of whom are on the left, some of whom are on the right.
Yeah, well, the solution to the problem is we have to back Israel and America and finish its Iranian evil regime. That's all there is to it.
Which wasn't the question that I was asking at the beginning of the programme. I was asking whether you think, John, I was asking whether you think that if there is a dramatic rise in inflation and the cost of living, whether you think the government has a role in alleviating that in some way. It's a perfectly reasonable question to ask. It's not wokey at all.
You can't ask the government to solve every problem.
I agree with that. And I said that at the moment, I don't think there is a case for that.
No, of course not. It's a nonsense to suggest such a thing and come up with mathematical ideas as to how you can do it. The only solution is to intervene and finish off what America and Israel started. That's all there is to it. And then your prices will come down.
Sometimes I really wonder about some of the people who actually don't listen to a word anyone says, think what they think someone thinks, and then come on the radio and make an absolute dick of themselves. Mark is in Budapest. Hello, Mark.
Hi. Well, we've done today what you're saying we should do, which is we've imposed a price cap on fuel in Hungary. So there'll be no increases from today's rates over the next 3 or 4 months. And it's being paid for out of the duty that's normally paid to the government. So we're not exactly a right-wing government. We're pretty left-wing on this, but we have actually imposed that price cap today.
Is that partly because Hungary is getting quite a lot of oil from Russia?
No, it's got nothing to do with the Russian thing, because there's different types of oil. That's crude oil and everything else like that. It's a little bit of different oil, but this is actually petroleum and diesel. So we're actually being able to stop those prices increasing.
So what's supposedly a right-wing, well, it's not supposedly, it is a right-wing government in Hungary, is actually imposed a bit of a socialist price cap.
So sometimes it's right, sometimes it's left. On these sort of things, we've done it before, and we also did it on food during the COVID era. And basically, we just have price caps. When it gets too much for the actual individuals, we just impose price caps. And it's happened before, and it's happening now, and he's done it very quickly on the fuel side, which is perfect because we don't want inflation coming here as well.
Do you think that there's any thing behind this in the fact that I think I'm right in saying there's an election in Hungary in the autumn and Mr. Orban is not doing that well in the polls?
There's an election in 1 month.
It's that soon? Sorry, I thought it was in the autumn. Well, that makes my point even more important, doesn't it?
Because he did it before during COVID. I mean, this is repeating something he's done before. You know, like I've also said to you, if a woman has 2 children here, they don't have to pay income tax again, which is a pretty left-wing measure in a right-wing government. So there's a lot of things here where it's not right or left. It's more of a nationalist agenda. And I don't know where we are, but at the very least, we don't have to pay any more fuel duty.
Well, there'll be a lot of
prices are constant.
But you see why I asked the question about the election, in that I mean that inevitably is going to be quite popular. So sort of a month or so before an election, I wonder whether he would have done that had there not been an election.
What's running the election at the moment is that the current party just has a picture of Zelensky on every billboard in the city and saying, "Don't vote for the party who supports Zelensky."
Really? And does that go down well?
Extremely. Because we are not supporters of Zelensky. We think it's a corrupt regime. And that is the truth of the majority of the nation.
Isn't it bizarre that sort of most of the rest of Europe would not take that view and they would regard the Putin regime as the corrupt one?
Because we are next to the Ukraine. We don't want a war. It's okay to ask for a war when you're 1,000 miles away. But when you're next to the regime, you know exactly what's going on and you do not want the war. The same here, same in Slovakia, same in Poland, same in all the countries around here and Czech Republic. We do not want the war. We are not as bullish as you are in Western Europe.
Well, no, I appreciate that. I've sort of read enough about Hungary's stance to know that, but it's always struck.
I've got 2 sons. I don't want them going to war.
Well, no parent wants their children to go to war,
Exactly.
and it'd be a bit odd if they did.
But the point I'm trying to make is that Zelensky, because they've also found some money that was transported through Hungary in the last few days, if you read about it, which was corrupt money. And basically, we just see it as a completely corrupt regime.
And Russia?
No, Russia is Russia. Russia is not going to change. But we all know they're not going to attack NATO. What they do in their own areas is their own concern, but they're not going to go into a NATO country now. That's pretty obvious. And so this is all of a false war used by Britain, used by other nations to think they're going to go into Poland and other countries.
You really have swallowed the Kool-Aid, haven't you?
I've been here 32 years.
Well, I think it's quite sad that you can't see the Putin regime for what it is.
No, we do know what they're doing. No, of course we know what they're doing. But what we always knew is that when the EU went as far as us and NATO went as far as Hungary and Poland and Slovakia, that was as far as they're ever going to go. And this was 15, 20 years ago. To go even further, you knew that was going to be much more problematical.
OK, Mark, thank you. Let's go to Anthony in Ashford. Hello, Anthony.
Hello, Ian. Yes. Well, we've had quite good experience, not good, but in recent years, quite a lot of experience of these crises and a lot of panic measures. they don't always pay off. In the 70s, they had price controls. And I think probably Thatcher got rid of those because they didn't quite work. So I think the government, what it needs to do is not panic. And people need not panic because these things tend to pan out. After initial spikes in prices, they tend to come down. We find other ways to get things. We get round it. But certainly in terms of the vulnerable, they've learned the lesson with the winter fuel. So good job they backtracked on that. That's a good thing, isn't it? They haven't got to do a big U-turn. They've already done it. Things like this, perhaps some cost of living payments. I don't know how those really benefit people exactly because I think a lot of it goes down the pub or on cigarettes. I don't know. They could consider that. But not do anything panicky. That's the main thing.
No, I agree with that. I think, look, in times of crisis, people expect the government to do as much as they can to help people, particularly people who are on low incomes. Now, yes. I think in COVID, the then government, I think, did do the right thing in the furlough programme. A lot of the measures that they did, you could say, they could have done different things, but you could say actually saved the economy from going completely under. You look at the energy price cap that was brought in 2022 by Liz Truss. Whatever you want to say about her, I think people who were affected by that, which is actually most of us, thought that was a reasonable thing to do at the time, given the spike in prices. I think that the problem now is how you judge and when you judge would be the right time to intervene, if you intervene at all. And there will be huge amounts of pressure on the government to intervene. There's all these sort of energy lobby groups and poverty lobby groups that will want them to intervene now. And that's what we elect politicians to do, to make the decisions. And that is going to be one of the most difficult decisions this government probably has to make as to if to intervene and when. Anthony, thank you very much. Keep your calls coming, 0345 6060 973. 7:31 on LBC News Headlines with Amelia Cox.
The Chancellor's warning the rate of inflation will likely go up as the conflict in the Middle East causes oil and gas prices to soar. But Rachel Reeves insists the fundamentals of Britain's economy remain strong because of the government's policies. MPs are due to debate a social media ban for under-16s. It's thought they'll consider whether blocking children from specific services instead might be a better way of keeping them safe online. And Scotland's busiest railway station is expected to stay closed for the next couple of days at least. Investigators are trying to work out what caused a fire in a shop near Glasgow Central to spread. LBC weather, much of the UK will be cloudy tonight, some scattered showers for the north and west, a low of 3 degrees.
This is LBC.
Search kayak for great deals on Wait, that doesn't say flights. Search kayak for great deals on car hire? With Kayak, you can compare hundreds of car rental sites to find great deals. Even better, you see costs up front. And if it's flexibility you're after, Kayak's got a handy free cancellation filter. Lovely stuff. So next time you're searching for car hire, at home or for your holes, search Kayak and go see for yourself.
It took me less than 30 seconds to request my repeat prescription on the NHS app.
That's quicker than making this brew.
And I saved time by not ringing the GP practice.
Win.
Plus, with notifications turned on, I know as soon as I get a new message.
Big win.
So there's more time for this tea break.
So did you go to that restaurant? We're delivering an NHS fit for the future. Request repeat prescriptions and turn on notifications to never miss a message. Tap the NHS app.
Wrong tool for the job? Don't make that mistake with your van. Get up to 30% off selected new Toyota vans and pickups with a warranty up to 10 years or 100,000 miles with every qualifying routine service. Visit your nearest Toyota centre or visit toyota.co.uk/van savings for more details. Savings on selected vans and pickups ordered by the 31st of March 2026. UK residents. See toyota.co.uk for full details. T's and C's apply.
Iain Dale on LBC. Text 84850.
7:33. We'll come back to your calls on the possible implications on the cost of living of the war in Iran in just a moment. But first, let's also talk about something which is sort of vaguely to do with this. It concerns Iran because Some of you will have seen yesterday that the Iranian women's football team who've been taking part in a competition in Australia, they refused to sing the Iranian national anthem, and I got a lot of criticism, which has to be said, from their government and within Iran for doing that. And the Australian government has come under criticism for not doing enough to support them. Donald Trump fired off one of his normal social media messages criticising the Australian Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese. But he has withdrawn that now, and he, while offering asylum to the women's football team in America, he's actually praised the Australian government now for also doing the same. And I think 5 of the players have been offered asylum. Well, let's get more on this from Negar Mojtahedi, who is a journalist and presenter for Iran International English and also the host of the I4 Iran podcast. Negar, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Now, you've been following this in great detail. Just take us through from the beginning what's happened and how we've got to this situation where the Iranians have been knocked out of this competition and in theory would now be going home to Iran. How's this developed?
Out in South Korea when the Iranian women's football team refused to sing the national anthem. So there was some speculation when they were in Australia that many of them would seek asylum, which a few of them did. And thankfully, the Australian Prime Minister has granted them the asylum, like President Trump announced on Truth Social. The thing is that it's important to understand that this was a very difficult decision for these girls to make, because when you seek asylum, when you oppose this regime, it's not only you who's going to be held accountable, your family as well. So a lot of these girls are going to be worried for their parents, for their siblings, for their loved ones back home in Iran. And that's why some of them decided to go back. But time will tell what ends up happening to them.
So some of them are definitely going back. Have they announced that?
It's what is known is that at least 5 of them have been granted asylum, which I could only assume that the remaining are headed back to Iran. And as you mentioned, there was a lot of people within the regime and conservative commentators who basically said that these girls were committing treason, that it was a wartime offense and that they were traitors and that they should receive a harsh punishment.
I mean, some will see this as a dress rehearsal for the Men's World Cup in June in America, because I think Iran are in the same group as the United States. I mean, you couldn't have made that up, really, could you? No. And I mean, I think there may well be some people in the United States who think the Iranian national team shouldn't even be allowed to take part, which could cause a bit of an international crisis. What's your view on what might happen in June?
I think we're going to see a lot of what you just saw with the female football team in Australia. Right now, not only with the war, but with the fact that we can't forget January 8th and 9th. For Iranians, the thing that is really on their minds is the tens of thousands of people that were massacred on January 8th or 9th. Much to the surprise of many non-Iranians who may think, well, it's the war is what they're thinking about right now and trying to avoid that. No, that's not what it is. It's the fact that this brutal regime is still in power after killing tens of thousands of their own people. So this is going to be an opportunity for a lot of these football players. A lot of them are not political. Of course, those that are part of the ownership, the managers and whatnot, yes, they are connected to the IRGC. They are connected to this mafia-like network, and they should not be allowed in the United States. But the players themselves, a majority of them are just there because they love the sport.
Apparently, Donald Trump was asked last week about the Iranian men's team coming to the World Cup and whether they will or not, and he said, "I really don't care."
Does that surprise you?
Not particularly, I suppose, but you'd like to think if you were the president of a nation that was hosting something like the World Cup, you'd want it to go smoothly. And I'm not sure comments like that particularly help, but I suppose that's what we have come to expect. Negar, thank you very much indeed. That's Negar Mojtahedi, who is a journalist and presenter for Iran International English. Right, back to the subject of the cost of living and whether you think that we're actually we've already got a cost of living crisis, or that's what most people people call it. Inflation, it has to be said, is at historically speaking, is at a relatively low level, around 3%. The thinking was it would come down over the next few months, but that looks very, very unlikely now. The Chancellor said today that it is going to go up. How much? Well, no one knows really, do they? Are you fearful of a renewed cost of living crisis? What effect will it have on you? And do you think the government will be forced to intervene? Let's go to John in Woodford. Hello, John.
Oh, hello. I want to speak about something that has really bothered me, and it isn't to do with the cost of living crisis, but it is because that's what's happened. When Trump came in, he did declare there will be no more wars, and he tried to stop wars. Now, what's happened now, surely he had advisors that would have told him that what would happen is the price of oil would go up, and that would affect all the people in Europe and us and probably all over the world. I don't quite understand it. He must have known this. So why is he doing this to us? Because if anything, we worry about everybody worries about the Russians attacking us, but he's actually attacking us more than the Russians are, isn't he?
It's not just affecting us. It will affect America as well. They're already, as they would say, gasoline prices are being hiked in America. So it's not just us that it's affecting. And he will have taken advice on this. But I think I saw a quote from him at the end of last week when he was talking about oil prices. And it was a bit like the World Cup thing. He basically said, I really don't care. In the short term, yeah, there may well be a hike. But the worry is that this won't just be for the short term. Most developed economies can cope with a short-term economic crisis. It's when it starts to last months. That's when it becomes a serious issue, particularly for ordinary people with household bills to pay.
Absolutely, and he must have known this. And I wonder why he did rush into this with the Israelis when they could have understand. But I don't. This business about them having talks before, and then Israel just jumped in. I mean, is that true? Can somebody tell me, is that true that Israel jumped in the middle of talks between Iran and America?
There were talks going on in Oman, but the Iranians consistently refused to give a guarantee that they would not develop a nuclear weapon. And in the end,
talks. Should we wait to the end of the talks and then maybe things could have come, in a different way? I mean, why do we do this? Why do we end up, shooting ourselves in the foot, or the whole world is now? When we could, as Churchill used to say, jaw not war, and it's
if you really think you can have proper jaw with a regime like the Iranians, well, fine. I don't.
Well, hang on a minute. Hold it. They did say that about the IRA, and we did talk. So in the end, people do give in, and they do talk because in the end, they want to have a happy life, and they want to go down the park on a Sunday with their family because they don't really want this endless hostility. Now, I don't know about Iranians, and I'm sure a load of them are lovely people. I've heard them on the radio. Surely we should give it more time. That's why we had what was it after the war? They brought in the what's the European thing? Where everybody came in and said, "Right, we're going to talk." Well, we're going to discuss things in future. Nobody's discussed this. There was no time.
These talks on the Iranian nuclear capacity have been going on for donkey's years. The Iranians have all.
And by the way,
I can't. You keep asking me questions, and then when I try and give you an answer, you constantly interrupt.
Well, you just told me that they were having talks.
Yeah, I hadn't finished what I was going to say, but you carry on.
Sorry, Albert. I'm sorry, but I didn't mean that. But what I'm trying to find out is what is his mentality? Are we ever going to have peace unless we talk? And we need to talk. And that also includes talking to Russia and includes talking to everybody because...
But he spends half his time talking to Russia. That's done a fat lot of good, hasn't it?
Yeah, I know, but you never give up on talks because in the end, until they...
Well, I'm sorry. In the end, sometimes you do. I mean, if we were having this conversation in 1939, 1940, you would be arguing for talks with Hitler.
we're not having this conversation then, and we were dealing with Iran.
No, there were plenty of people who were arguing at that point we should be having conversations with Hitler.
But a lot of people in this country now think that, it's a bad war, it's not good. And by the way, we're not dealing with somebody that goes around wanting to come in and attack our country.
Oh, really?
Well, I don't think.
Are you unfamiliar with the MI5 telling us that over the last few years there have been 20 Iranian attacks in this country that have been foiled by our security services? Are you seriously suggesting to me that Iran has never been a threat to this country? You try telling that to Iranian expats who live in this country.
Okay, let me ask you something. Do they have bombers that can come over and bomb us? I don't think they do, and I don't think they have an army ready to come into this country.
There is a lot of different ways of conducting warfare, and terrorism is one of them, and they are the biggest funder of terrorism in Europe.
Terrorism is bad, and we know that.
I'm glad you agree with that.
But let's be honest, in the end, jaw, not war.
Well, yeah,
when are we going to do something
You've already said that, and I've tried to explain that there are times when you have to draw a line and realise that just continually talking is never going to get anywhere. Donald Trump, Donald Trump,
as a presenter, believe that.
For God's sake, Donald Trump.
Well, for God's sake, just listen.
Well, because
you're losing it.
No, I'm not losing it. Well, I'm losing it. I'm losing it with you because every time you ask me a question and I try to answer it, you then continually interrupt. So it makes a conversation almost impossible.
Sorry, we'll carry on.
Donald Trump has made clear that he's come to the conclusion that just talking to the Iranians in these talks in Oman is not going to get anywhere. So he made the decision. Now, you can disagree with that decision. I think that the attacks on Iran are justifiable in many ways. I've never said that Britain should have been part of it. I do think we should have allowed our bases to be used, but I've never said that we should have been a direct part of it. And we have yet to see what the end result of this is.
Okay, you've said your bit. It wasn't Trump's war.
Yeah, it is my programme, actually, John.
War. It was Israel that went in. Now, hang on.
America and Israel went in together.
No, Israel went in first, I understand. They just decided that's it, we're going to go in. And, okay, that's what they want. They want to take over that part of the world.
No, they don't want. No, they don't want to take over that part of the world. They want to stop a nation which is committed to the destruction of Israel.
I agree.
There is
in the end, even they can be spoken to eventually and say, look, whatever your plans are, it can't happen, because that's what happened. We settled with the IRA in a lot of ways, and we didn't have this continuous bombing in our country. Come on, we got to find an answer to this, haven't we?
Well, there does need to be an answer to it. I mean, Donald Trump thinks he knows the answer. I'm not sure that he's right. I don't think that they have a plan for what happens after the bombing finishes. I don't think there's any plan on what would follow the Iranian regime. Now, I mean, Donald Trump can say, well, OK, if it collapses, let the Iranian people decide. Well, that didn't work particularly well in Libya, did it? So that there are fears as to what might happen after that.
Well, I agree. I understand exactly what you're saying, but in the end, I think a country should, in fact, we should use our intelligence and money to encourage countries to change their leaders, not necessarily go in and try and do it ourselves, because that's what leads to trouble. But I understand exactly what you're saying, and I have to get in quick because I always think you're going to cut me off.
I think, John, you will agree with me that you've had a fair crack of the whip. You've been on for, I think, at least 5, if not 6 minutes, which is double the length of a normal call. So I hope you feel you've had a fair...
From the adverts you do.
Pardon? What did you say?
I said, do I get some compensation for the money you earn on your adverts? I mean, that would be pretty
no, because of you, I'm 2 minutes late going to the adverts, so I'm losing global money at the moment.
Look, I really am very sorry. You just have a good night. Maybe go down the pub later. That would do you good.
I don't drink. John, thank you very much indeed. Always part as friends, apart from the other John. It's 7:48.
On the latest episode of The Newsagents.
The surge in the oil price that means we're no longer talking about a Middle East war. We're talking about global economic consequences from it. And will that make Donald Trump reconsider what he's doing?
Get the latest episode of The Newsagents with Emily Maitlis, John Sopel and Lewis Goodall. Listen or watch on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
Train to Cambridge and then all aboard the paddleboards. A little bit different, should be fun. Or wobbly, or wet. The wet
suits a good look on you, Steve. Oh, actually, this is very relaxed. Georgie's up the River Cam without a paddle. Train home, that was such a laugh. I think I might even have a new hobby. Download the Thameslink Railway app to book tickets and save a third off group travel on off-peak journeys. Thameslink Railway, where every stop is a story.
BetMGM was born in Vegas. So just like the Cheltenham Festival, we know a thing or two about entertainment. Every ride, every race, every roar. This is Cheltenham Vegas style. Sign up to BetMGM now. Bet £10 and get £40 in free bets. That's right. Bet £10 and get £40 in free bets. Are you ready for the greatest show on turf? BetMGM. It's showtime. Minimum stake £10. New customers only. Wagering requirements and conditions apply. 18 plus. Please gamble responsibly.
It's hard to concentrate when you're worried about your health. It can feel like there's a wall between you and the rest of the world. Like you can't be fully present. Hello, AXA Health. How can I help? At AXA Health Insurance, we build our teams with people who care. So when you need us, we're here to support you. For cover that cares, search AXA Health Insurance. Pre-existing conditions are not covered.
Right then, who's all in for Cancer Research UK's Race for Life? Anglers, ramblers, climbers, five-a-siders, surfers, gamers, bikers, hang gliders, book clubbers. Are we up for it? Let's go all in against cancer, all in to help fund life-saving research. Sign up to your local 3K, 5K, 10K or Pretty Muddy event from just $14.99. Search Race for Life. Prices vary by event distance and participant age.
Iain Dale, text 84850. This is LBC.
10 to 8 on LBC. Let me tell you who's on cross question at 8. We have the former Conservative Cabinet Minister, Justine Greening, who is the founder of the social mobility campaign, the Purpose Coalition. Darren Paffey is Labour MP for Southampton Itchen. Pippa Halings is Liberal Democrat energy spokesperson and MP for South Cambridgeshire. And Tom Skinner, founding partner of the public relations agency Nexus and former advisor to a Conservative Cabinet Minister. They'll all be here from 8 to take your calls. Not a single space on the switchboard at the moment, but do phone in a few minutes with your questions for Cross Question. We'll come back to your calls on the cost of living in just a few moments, but if you were like me, sort of glued to the news channels last night and also Twitter, you'll have seen these terrible pictures of the fire in Glasgow that looked at one stage as if it was going to engulf the whole of Glasgow Central Station. Well, let's get the latest on this from Alan Sasinski, LBC Scotland correspondent who joins us from the scene. Alan, what's the latest and what do we know about how this fire started?
Well, in terms of the latest, it's still a scene of mass disruption here, and even as I speak, there's 3 firefighters and 2 engines going past me now. Water still being doused onto the smouldering rubble down below, even 24 hours later. In terms of what caused this, well, the suggestion is that this started in a small vape shop at the very bottom of this building. Officials keen to stress that their investigations are still ongoing, that that's not been confirmed. But in terms of how destructive and disruptive a fire can actually be, you mentioned the pictures you were seeing last night, Ian. It really doesn't get too much worse than this, because we have an 180-year-old iconic landmark reduced to a pile of ashes in front of me. We've got dozens of businesses that were in there completely destroyed, and Scotland's busiest train station next door has had to completely shut for the day, and we've just had it confirmed in the last hour that that's going to be the case again tomorrow. More than 100,000 journeys will be affected by this. So this has caused chaos and real genuine upset for a lot of Glaswegians, because this isn't just an old building. It really was the centrepiece of the postcard picture of Glasgow for the last 2 centuries. And all of a sudden, people like these commuters who I spoke to were waking up to it gone.
Pretty shocked that the building's collapsed and it's still smoke on a Monday morning. Almost looks like it's like at the Blitz or something with the smoke and the hoses and stuff.
I've never been one of these people, crowd stop and look at things. That's the first time in my whole life I've ever went, I need to take a wee video because that's a very old building. It's a shame.
We went at the concert and my train got cancelled, but we just come to see what it was actually like aftermath. Quite a bad fire.
This is like a totally iconic view. To see all that destroyed, it's heartbreaking, really heartbreaking.
But now the pressure is mounting to answer the question of how did this happen. As I say, the working theory is, and from the footage we've seen as well, seems to be largely correct that this may have started in that vape shop. That's where smoke was first seen and where explosions potentially of lithium batteries were heard. And that would potentially explain how this got so out of hand to the point where, as I say, firefighters are still here dousing it down more than a day on. Officials not confirming that theory, but a lot of anger spilling out, a lot of calls for regulation of these vape shops, strengthened regulation, given how many there are in similar buildings in Glasgow. And the First Minister, John Swinney, did seem sympathetic to that idea, speaking at the Cordon earlier.
Certainly from what I could see last night, it looked like it emerged from a vape shop, and that's the advice that I've been given this morning. Having heard some of the explosions, it's deeply unsettling and unnerving, so we've got to have an open mind about what steps should be taken in these circumstances, and that's exactly what the government will do.
And of course, Ian, it's not just Glasgow where there are many of these vape shops. These are in place right across the UK, so potentially expect to see these calls on a wider basis.
And just to finish off with you, Alan, is there any suggestion that the structure of the station itself is in danger of collapse?
Well, from speaking to the Network Rail officials on the Cordon, the short answer is no, they don't think so. But the reason that it is shut is because they have to tick all the boxes, go around all the lines here, go around all of it. Last night there were some really worrying photos where it looked like there were flames inside the main concourse, but it seems that that was perhaps coming onto the glass roof from outside, a huge orange glow emitting onto it. So it looks like the station is largely intact anyway, but there will take days for them to actually decide that that's the case and that they can have trains running again.
Alan, thank you very much indeed. That's Alan Sosinski, LBC's Scotland correspondent, reporting to us live from the scene at Glasgow Central. Right, cross question at 8, but first let's speak to Josh in Westgate-on-Sea, the venue of my first ever childhood holiday. Josh.
Good evening, and thank you very much indeed. First time caller.
Welcome.
I used to listen to you back in the day when you was doing Drive.
Well, that's what, 7 years ago now.
I live near you, so I'm used to listen to Drive. About my point on the fuel crisis, when I go out with my carers in the car, I've noticed that the fuel prices have gone up.
Yep.
And my point is, paying for, because our cars are diesel, I reckon the fuel prices should be lowered.
But, I mean, isn't it a bit too soon to say that? Because, I mean, say the bombing stopped tomorrow and everything sort of went back to normal fairly quickly. I mean, it would be a bit odd for the government to do that, wouldn't it? Because, in effect, the oil prices would reduce and therefore the prices at the pump would come down. Probably not quickly enough for many of us, but that's usually what would happen.
It's like when I was coming back from Canterbury earlier with my support worker, I saw the fuel price up and I'm thinking to myself, why are the fuel prices high? I reckon in the next 2 months they could be lowered, but who knows?
OK, thank you very much, Josh. Let's go to Michael in Dover. Hello, Michael.
Hello. It's interesting, actually, listening to your previous caller. I've been going over to Planet Thanet lately to fill up my cars, and the fuel is considerably cheaper in Thanet than it is in Dover. Why, I don't know. It can't cost that much more to deliver to petrol stations in Dover than it does at Westgate. Anyway, the point I wanted to make was that I think there's an element of profiteering going on with the oil companies, because surely the petrol and diesel on the forecourts currently left the Middle East, or wherever it came from, way before the conflict.
Well, you must have read my mind, because I said exactly that to my partner last night.
Oh, there you go. Great minds think alike.
Exactly, Michael.
I mean, when potatoes go up in price, the chips go up in the shop. But when the potatoes drop in price, the price of chips in the chip shop doesn't come down anything like as quick as they went up.
Oh, that's because
I think the same thing's happening with oil.
The price of the oil that's in the chip vat things, whatever they're called, as Ranjit in Albury would tell us, that the price of that would go up as well.
Right. Anyway, I have to say, I find you really inspiring, the way you deliver your programme. So much so that I dug out my Conservative membership card the other day and the number, and I shall be writing to the Conservative Party with a few ideas for policies. But
I thought you were going to say you're going to recommend me for a peerage.
Well, you deserve that.
I think I do, but nobody else does apart from you, Michael. Thank you very much indeed. Right. We are going to convene the cross-question panel in just a moment. Joining me tonight for the next hour will be Justine Greening, founder of social mobility campaign The Purpose Coalition, also, of course, a former Conservative Education Secretary. Darren Paffy will be making his debut on the programme. He's Labour MP for Southampton Itchen. Pippa Halings is Liberal Democrat energy spokesperson and MP for South Cambridgeshire. And Thomas Skinner is founding partner of the public relations agency Nexus, who's a former advisor to a Conservative Cabinet Minister. So they are here to take your calls on 0345 6060 973. You can watch us on Global Player, the LBC app, and indeed the LBC YouTube channel.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 8 o'clock, the Chancellor says she's ready to support the release of oil reserves as war in the Middle East drives up prices. The cost of a barrel of Brent crude climbed over $100 for the first time since Russia's invasion of Ukraine earlier. It's since fallen back. The conflict is already affecting the price of fuel and some mortgage deals and could impact the cost of food and transport. Rachel Reeves has told MPs the government is determined to protect households.
A rapid de-escalation in the Middle East remains the best way to protect us from rising energy bills. But as the situation continues to unfold, my priorities will continue to be helping families with the cost of living and protecting the public finances.
Donald Trump earlier claimed the rise in oil prices, which could drive up inflation, is a small price to pay for peace. The Kremlin's said tonight Vladimir Putin's held a call with President Trump. The Russian president is said to have put forward ideas to end the Iran conflict. The Tech Secretary has told LBC further action will be taken if firms fail to pay fines from Ofcom. Since our first online safety day around a year ago, we've learned just £55,000 of £3 million in penalties has been collected. Liz Kendall says she wants to see the fines paid in full.
I expect them to be. I expect Ofcom to enforce this. If the fines aren't paid up, we'll see what further action we need to take, because companies who want to act here have to obey the rule of the law here, and I expect the money.
You can find more on Online Safety Day on the LBC app. It's been confirmed Scotland's busiest railway station will stay shut for a second day. A fire which has destroyed businesses at a 19th century building near Glasgow Central has caused widespread travel disruption. David Farries is from the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service.
There are no reported casualties. However, the fire has caused extensive damage to the building, including the loss of its iconic dome.
And League One Port Vale have landed a dream FA Cup quarter-final tie at Easter, a trip to Stamford Bridge to face Chelsea after knocking out Sunderland. Manchester City will host Liverpool in the standout All-Premier League clash. In the City, the FTSE 100 closed down 35 points at 10,249. The pound buys $1.34 and €1.16. LBC weather, mostly cloudy tonight, some scattered showers for the north and west, a low of 3. Cloudy for most tomorrow, some rain in the west and winds picking up, a high of 15 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Matt Hewitt.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. Cross Question with Iain Dale.
Hello, very good evening. It's 8 on LBC. It's Iain Dale here with you with Monday's Cross Question. On my panel, sitting to my left, welcome back to Pippa Halings, Liberal Democrat energy spokesperson and MP for South Cambridgeshire. Next to her is Darren Paffy, Labour MP for Southampton Itchen. To my right, Justine Greening, founder of the social mobility campaign The Purpose Coalition and former Conservative Cabinet Minister. And next to her, Tom Skinner, founding partner of the public relations agency Nexus and a former advisor to Michelle Donlan when she was at the DCMS and the, now what's it called, the Science...
Science Innovation.
That's the one, yeah. We'll take your calls, your questions on 0345 6060 973. You can WhatsApp on that number. You can text 84850. And of course, you can watch us on Global Player, the LBC app, and the LBC YouTube channel.
Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Cross question. Watch live on both Global Player and the new LBC app. This is LBC.
First question from Nikki in Kent, who says Ed Miliband was right to push for net zero and a greener economy despite the criticism and derision he faces. By investing in renewables and building greater energy self-sufficiency, countries like ours could be far less dependent on volatile fossil fuel markets or unstable regions. Isn't a strong green energy base not just a matter of climate policy, but also of economic security and independence? Pippa.
Well, absolutely. I couldn't agree more with you there. It's what really, really worries us now.
Dressed in green as well.
Yeah, and I'm dressed in green as well. But, you know, we've got families and businesses really, really worried at home now because of this skyrocketing prices that could have an impact on petrol prices, energy bills, those rural households who have to use oil for heating. And just since the beginning of the war, that's already doubled the price to refill their tanks, never mind going into other prices. So the UK is one of the most exposed to volatile energy markets. So we absolutely have to make sure we continue the efforts to get off our over-dependence on fossil fuels, make sure that we can have more and more homegrown green energy whose prices we control. And then I think right now what we also have to do is calling on the Chancellor to scrap the planned fuel duty hike. We have to make sure that those who have to use oil for heating get support, which they didn't do initially in 2022.
One of my listeners in the last hour said that he's just been quoted for 500 litres of heating fuel, what he'd normally pay £300 for, £850.
Exactly, and there's even a limited availability now because of this sort of panic buying going on. And that didn't happen when Russia invaded Iraq. And once again, a single, militarily...
Ukraine
military escalation just made us exposed to these prices. Back in 2022, those on oil heating didn't initially get support from the government. It had to be retrospectively paid back to them. And they were exposed during all that period. We've got to make sure that doesn't happen to them this time.
But critics would say, well, critics of what the stance that Nikki was taking would say that it's better to have a broader base for energy. So it's actually counterproductive to sort of stop North Sea oil or sort of going for North Sea gas as well, because there are still reserves in the North Sea. So surely in times like this, it would make sense to use them.
So, Iain, I think we all know that we're going to need to use, oil and gas for decades to come, and that's actually what's been planned out. However, with Reform and the Conservatives peddling myths such as fracking or Trump's demands to drill more in the North Sea, they will not do nothing to change the price of gas that people are exposed to at the moment. So we have to have good gas storage. We have to make sure that we've got a couple more decades of oil and gas for the UK. But right now, it is gas that is setting the price of our electricity.
Justine.
I agree largely with Pippa. In the end, you need energy security, and I think that needs to come from a mix of policy levers. Part of it is expanding our homegrown energy, which we have actually been doing pretty successfully over the last 10, 15 years, probably in particular. On energy storage, gas, actually, we've reopened the Rough gas storage facility, which had been mothballed in, I think, about 2017, 2018. That's really important at times like this to make sure we have the supplies on hand. There's more investment going in that in the coming years. But of course, you can't just switch off North Sea oil, neither should we. And I think what's interesting to me is when you listen to MPs in Parliament talk, there's actually a lot more consensus around the need for a measured approach, protecting ourselves today whilst also taking longer term steps that protect us in the future. And I think in the meantime, it's inevitable that we'll have to have a really close eye on what these surging oil prices do to the economy right now. And I think the big question is this a temporary blip, Or are we going to see something more longer term? And the answer to that question is dependent on probably two main things. One, does this crisis continue? And secondly, the nature of the damage that's been caused in the Gulf. Is it short-term damage that can be patched up and then we can get the oil supplies moving quickly if Trump suddenly gets up tomorrow and says, right, I've finished? Or is this more longer-term degradation, if you like, of capacity, in which case it will take maybe weeks to get capacity switched on again, and that's much more destabilising for economies and the oil price.
And I suppose that the difficulty for the government is going to be, well, when do we flick a switch? I mean, if we're going to have some sort of rescue package for domestic customers, or maybe even sort of the transport sector, when do you do that? When do you judge that it's necessary?
Indeed. And I think probably at this stage, it's quite early to make a decision that there's some sort of intervention that's definitely needed. But I think over the coming 2-3 weeks, it will become clear that a decision needs to be taken one way or another. I think if you look at, for example, fuel duty and the impact that has not just on hauliers, but ordinary families, people getting to work, the feed through of that into inflation, which then impacts, RPI, CPI, a whole range of indicators that then feed through into welfare and other spend, including, as we now know, student loan repayments. It's understanding where you want to really take action, and there are some policy levers you can pull that have second-order impacts that you might want. There are others that are much more limited. For example, you might want to take a fresh look at the winter fuel allowance, and that is absolutely targeted at some people who are particularly vulnerable. These are different sorts of decisions for the government to take, and they depend on what problem it's trying to fix, what it wants to support, whether it's the economy or just households, and how long-term this crisis seems to be.
So Iain, I would just say there, I think we know that in terms of energy bills, those won't be impacted until after July because there's a cap on energy prices until July. So that gives us a little bit of time to see what's happening in terms of the prolonging of this war. However, there are impacts right now, as you've just talked about, so for example, oil heating or the price of
exactly.
the pump. So those things we should be doing right now, scrapping that fuel duty hike.
And in theory, the government, I mean, say for example, the price of diesel went up to £1.80, £2 even, which I think it was at that level at some point in the past. And the government could take the view, well, this is going to be so damaging to economic growth that we need to do something. And that would probably be sooner rather than July. Darren Paffy for Labour.
Well, I mean, your caller was absolutely right. Ed Miliband did have the foresight in the face of a lot of opposition to actually start taking these steps to get that sovereignty back on our territory. The difficulty is, of course, that when we keep having to dig up fossil fuels from under war zones, that's not sustainable. So it is about the supply, and it's also about making sure that our solar power, our wind, our waves are generating our energy on a long-term basis. And that's where we've kind of got to make more progress. No one's talking about switching off the North Sea oil and gas overnight. We know that there is still decades in there, but what we're saying is actually rather than just expanding there, we need to make the most of the other energy sources that are there. That just makes sense. Clear
he doesn't want to grant any new oil licenses. I mean, is that something that should be reviewed now on the basis that, well, we may well be in a big energy crisis very soon? And although, I mean, once you grant the licenses, it's probably 20 or 30 years before it comes on tap. I mean, it would be a bit short-sighted, surely, to just cut off that altogether.
Well, I mean, I'm sure, and as a humble backbencher, I don't know about the discussions in the cabinet room, but I'm pretty sure they are keeping everything under review.
You're not talking to the right people, Darren.
I'll keep trying. As soon as I get back from here. But, I mean, the Chancellor has said today that they are looking at what they can do both within our own suppliers, but also talking to international partners.
But do you fear, as a Labour backbencher, while there's already considerable concern about a cost of living crisis, that this could really take the government's whole economic policy off track?
Well, we get it. There is real concern about what is happening. We came in with the plan for change. We are delivering on that change. We're getting stuff done. But of course, then the outside world happens as well, and we have to be able to react to that. So those international conversations will keep on happening, but we have got to keep going so that we don't hit the pause button on securing our own sovereign energy supply.
Tom Skinner.
I think we definitely need a mix of energy. The thing with the oil and gas under the North Sea is it's there now, and whether it takes a year, 2 years, 5 years to bring on tap, I think it would be a big signal to the market to grant the new licences in the North Sea. One thing I think the government can do much more immediately is directly on fuel prices, and they can control the taxation on fuel prices. So it shouldn't be that the prices that people are paying to fill up their car and things are going up, and that big energy giants are profiteering from that. And there's some levers the government can pull there to try and control the energy prices and make sure that big corporates from around the world aren't benefiting from the increases.
Well, funny you should say that, because that's the subject to the next question. It's from Chris, who says, what can the government do now to stop oil companies profiteering off this war? Prices at the pumps shouldn't be soaring right now. And I guess the logic for that is, well, the petrol or diesel that are coming to the pumps now must have already been in storage. It's already been paid for. So why have prices gone up 8 or 10 pence a litre already?
Yeah, and from a consumer's point of view, you read on the news that energy prices are going to go up, and you see the petrol prices go up 10p a litre, and you don't actually blame the petrol company for that. You think this is a geopolitical problem and you expect to pay more. But actually, as you say, that petrol has been sitting in the ground for a very long time in tanks and things. And I'm just concerned there is quite a lot of potential for exploitation there. And the government, I think, really can take a stance there.
Darren, do you think that the government should be talking to the Competition and Markets Authority and saying, hang on, you want to have a look at this right now?
Well, I think so. I mean, one of the things which has been a real pressure on the country for years now, and while we're starting to turn a corner, we're not out of it yet, is the cost of living crisis. So people are really concerned about what this is going to mean. We've acknowledged today that is very real. So I think we ought to be taking any measures that we possibly can, talking to those suppliers, the companies. It would be morally wrong for them to profiteer out of this. I get it. There's always a price that goes with the scarcity of resource. I understand markets, but that resource is not scarce yet by a long shot. And so actually everything that you have rightly said is already in supply. It's already been drilled for and so on. They need to put a cap on some of the prices. And the government's shown that it's willing to do that in the middle of a cost of living crisis. We froze the fuel duty increase. So that's one of the things I'm sure will be kept under review.
Because Justine David says, why can't we have a cap on petrol and diesel like the energy price cap? Well, in theory, we could, but there could be the law of unintended consequences there.
Absolutely. And I think in economics, the history of price controls generally isn't a very positive one for consumers ultimately, because it stops price signalling to manufacturers to provide more product and all of that. So I think broadly you need to try and let the markets function, but I think at the same time, when they are essential for the economy, then, we have other means like the Competition and Markets Authority to look at this. I filled my car up on Sunday, it was already £1.40. And, I actually did think, I'm sure this petrol was here long before. So why is it so expensive?
And what we often find is they keep the prices up after the conflict has finished or after the spike has finished.
They go up very fast, don't they? But then
they don't
when the price comes down, don't come down quite as fast as they go up.
You're being so populist, all of you. But you're right.
Another question is, our allies in the States, they have been looking at, they've taken action, of course, in Venezuela.
I'm surprised you didn't say our allies in inverted commas.
They are absolutely our allies. The allyship goes way beyond the individuals that occupy the seats at the time. But, Venezuela is an incredibly oil-rich country. We should be looking at the breadth of places. And again, we've really shackled ourselves to countries where either there is political instability or they are places like Russia, where they're hardly our allies in any sense of the word. So, we need to look at the breadth of the international supply as well.
Right, more questions in just a moment. If you'd like to put your question by phone or WhatsApp, the number 0345 6060 973. 17 minutes past 8.
This is LBC.
Whether you still own it or not, if you had a diesel car built between 2009 and 2020, you could be entitled to compensation. Checking takes minutes at jointheclaim.com, and if successful, compensation could be worth thousands. Diesel emissions claims are still open for Ford, Nissan, Renault, Mercedes, BMW and Jaguar Land Rover. Don't miss out. Join millions of drivers across the UK. Check your vehicle now at jointheclaim.com.
Join the claim!
When you're smiling, don't let missing teeth stop you smiling. At Banning Dental, our experts could restore your beautiful smile with premium dental implants. See online for our price match promise. Banning Dental Group Clinics. Keep on smiling.
Keep on smiling, and the whole world smiles with you.
banningdental.co.uk. I'm
Natasha.
I'm Leah, and this is my NHS story. I could just feel my body didn't feel right, so my GP referred me to the CDC. Had some blood tests done, and within 24 hours I had my results. And that just reassured me that I was being taken seriously.
The government is opening new community diagnostic centres, with many already available 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, so the NHS can be there for all of us when we need it. Find your closest one at gov.uk/NHS Fit for the Future, available England-wide.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC. Text 84850.
19 minutes past 8. If you tuned in a bit late and you're wondering who on earth this panel are, let me tell you. Justine Greening, former Conservative Education Secretary. I always put education, they're ignoring the fact that you're international development and transport. We should make that clear as well. But she now is the founder of the Purpose Coalition. Darren Paffy is Labour MP for Southampton Itchen, making his debut on the programme. Pippa Halings is, if you can be a veteran after only being in Parliament for 18 months of this programme, that's what Pippa is. I think this is your third, at least your third appearance. Liberal Democrat Energy spokesperson, MP for South Cambridgeshire, and Tom Skinner, founding partner of the PR agency Nexus, former Conservative Special Advisor. Right, Rico says, do you think Keir Starmer might have let out a cheer when he saw that Tony Blair had backed Trump in the row about us not joining in with this harebrained war? Darren Paffy.
Well, respectful of current and former leaders, of course.
Boring.
Tony Blair is entitled to his opinion, but you probably want me to say is that I think he's wrong, which in this case I do. He gets a lot of things right, but it's his opinion. The key thing for me and for a lot of people, and I've had quite a few emails from this, not many of them not from Labour supporters, but they said, please tell the Prime Minister that we back him on this, because if we're going to learn any of the lessons of history, it's that Chilcot told us there was a war pretty recently, all of us can remember it, where peaceful options had not been exhausted, where the intelligence was flawed, and where there was no proper post-war planning. If we can't go to our service personnel at this stage and say at the very minimum, we know those three things are in place before we commit you to offensive action, then I think we've learned nothing. So I do think it was right to hold off for now. Obviously, the situation changes. Iran didn't have to go completely mad with missiles around countries where we have bases. They have done that. Therefore, we are now in defensive mode. And we're absolutely right to do that. And the Defence Secretary came to the House today to tell everyone the latest on what we are doing to make sure that British citizens and British interests are kept safe, but that we stand ready to keep an eye on what is happening.
Do you not think, though, that given British interests have been under attack, that we should be in offensive mode now and we should be going after the sources of these attacks from Iran and not just leave it to the Americans to do our dirty work for us? Well, Pippa's shaking her head already, but
I mean, it's not dirty work. I mean, we are, British jets have been involved in making sure that the drones which have been sent out to further attack us are shot down. Bases are being used by our allies to destroy Iranian missiles at source. So I think we are playing the part that at this point it is right to play.
OK, Justine?
I think in the end, the challenge we've got is we've moved from a world that was really driven by rules, clear rules at the UN, World Trade Organization, IMF, etc., to a world that's now driven by relationships. And it's really difficult, I think, for leaders around the world to reassess those ally relationships. And I think, to be fair to Keir Starmer, there wasn't a huge amount of notice. I sat on the National Security Council for nearly 4 years as International Development Secretary. When I think about the time, not a lengthy time, but the physical time it takes to get people together, to be able to be fully briefed on the intelligence reports, to understand from the military and armed forces what your options are, your capacity, etc., to understand the risks around those different options. That does take time. And I think perhaps one of the acknowledgements we would have from the Americans is there was not a lot of time for Britain's traditional allies to understand what was going on, what was planned, what the objectives were, and to then react. I think the UK has indeed played a role since. I think it's interesting to see tonight President Macron talking about potentially naval support to help open the Straits of Hormuz. So in a sense, there's the politics of this that I think has been very difficult for the Prime Minister. And then I think there's the practical realities of trying to get decisions right at these critical times, particularly when they involve armed personnel putting themselves at risk, and understanding in a very fluid situation what the national interest is for the UK.
What about the Tony Blair point from Rico there?
I have to say, I think a lot of people will have seen Blair pop up and think, oh my God, in that case, we definitely shouldn't be supporting the Trump.
I mean, that's a knee-jerk reaction, isn't it?
No, I think it is absolutely, it's a knee-jerk reaction. But for most people who aren't foreign policy buffs and don't particularly, follow that news, actually, they may well have seen that as a bit of a proxy as to whether that foreign policy is a good or a bad idea. Of course, in practice, there's a lot more to this than that. And I think it's worth saying that the Iranian regime has killed tens of thousands of its own people in recent protests. It has continued to enrich uranium in order to get closer and closer to weapons-grade nuclear capacity. And this is a country that absolutely has been trying to build up its ability to pose a clear threat to not just its regional neighbours, but more broadly. And so is this a country that needs to be contained at the very least, Ian? The answer to that is yes, and that was a yes.
Trump's
whether
doing,
it was,
isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Whether it was Obama with the deal he did with Iran, whether it's Trump. Trump basically doesn't believe in containment. Actually, Trump believes in reducing the risk fundamentally. That's the difference that Trump has with Obama.
Tom.
Tony Blair is a uniquely complicated and conflicted person in this particular discussion, but I think probably, and it's a very fine balance, probably right on the substance of what he says. I think it's a bit mean. The politics of it is a bit mean, and the fact he came out today and said he didn't anticipate that these comments would get out. I mean, he was talking, I think, to Robert Peston on stage with a room full of journalists. The fact that one of the best politicians we've had in decades would think that wouldn't leak, I think is for the birds. So the interesting question is why Blair thought that intervention would be helpful for a Prime Minister who is obviously in a very difficult position. No one, I think, even if you're the strongest critic of the Prime Minister, thinks this is an easy position to be put in. Whether you think he's making the right or the wrong decision, I just think it's fascinating that Tony Blair thought that it was the sensible and constructive thing to do for the Labour Party to wade in.
I imagine Keir Starmer issued a few expletives. I'm not expecting you to comment on that, Darren, but I would have done if I'd been here.
I can't list which ones they are. I mean, what's been really interesting about people's response to this is, of course, that we have allies, absolutely, but we are a sovereign country, and particularly parties on the right, more the Conservatives now than the Conservatives as they were when Justin was around, keep telling us we're sovereign, we've got to make sovereign decisions. We make a sovereign decision to take a slightly different position to one of our closest allies, and now that's suddenly the biggest outrage on the go. I mean, there has to be some consistency to this. We are a sovereign nation. The elected Prime Minister has made this decision, and he's set out his reasons why. And broadly, I would say no one's come to me saying, well, that was nonsense. We should have just gone gung-ho into it.
Pippa?
Yeah, and Rico, your question I think is right. It's not just Blair, but we've also seen Kemi Badenoch rushing to say that we need to be joined at the hip with Trump on this. Nigel Farage, I think, is actually in Mar-a-Lago. He's knocking at the door because he hasn't been given the meeting that he wanted, I think,
Just to be fair to Kemi Badenoch, which I always like to be, she has said that she would not have gone in the military action with Trump, but she feels that we ought to have let him use the bases, which we are now doing.
So I think, as Liberal Democrats, we think that this is an illegal and unilateral war on Iran. We think that the way of providing freedom for the Iranian citizens and to get to nuclear disarmament is that military intervention has not achieved that. And
yet. It might. It's a possibility that it could.
What it has done is it's engulfed the region in conflict. It's drawn countries from across the world, including the UK, into this conflict. And it's also...
Iran has done that.
Yes, with its reckless retaliation to that. Yeah, but that's what happens when you suddenly throw dynamite into a very, very difficult region. You can't just... There is no objective to this war.
What about the Tony Blair point?
Well, I think that's what I'm saying. I think it's unhelpful to Keir Starmer, as has been, as Darren was saying, as the other comments from the parties on the right. So we think that Starmer was right to do that. We think now we have to make sure that British citizens are not at risk, and we have to make sure that British servicemen and women are protecting citizens across the world and our bases. But that defensive position that we're holding could be a very slippery slope. We don't know. There is no guarantee that Trump won't go beyond that defensive to offensive. There's what monitoring is there to know actually what those targets are? And we're questioning whether there's actually any ability to monitor what those targets are. So we've got to be really, really careful about...
Do you still consider the United States to be a key ally of the United Kingdom?
Under this incumbent of the White House, I don't think we've got a reliable ally. We've got a long-standing relationship with the US, but with the current incumbent, no. And that's why, as you know, we've made this call to the Prime Minister to advise the King not to cancel his state visit in April, because that's about the current incumbent, not about the wider, broader, special relationship. But we also have to think about these, when we talk about Justin's point about relationships, this is now about relationships and the way that is perceived. And we know that a state visit, provides a sense, a badge of honour and status to the current incumbent, and we don't think it should be used in that way.
Anybody else think the state visit shouldn't go ahead?
I think it should go ahead. I disagree with Pippa on this, because I think our relationship with the US people goes far deeper than a president. And I respect democracy at the end of the day. I completely understand the point that, it's a very difficult time. But I also think in a mature relationship between our two countries, we should be able to accept that there'll be times when we disagree on strategy. And that doesn't have to undermine that broader relationship.
Agree, but we have used these tools before. So we've had 2 state visits, which is unprecedented for a president, and that hasn't brought the the ability to actually, have that special relationship in action, either through, economics.
Well, it had until this week.
Well, it just shows how unreliable it is. You asked me whether or not we think we've got an ally there. It's an unreliable ally.
I mean, ultimately, as politicians, yes, we're in the positions we are at the time we are, and we've got to take that seriously and be decisive. But at the same time, we're also stewards of those kinds of relationships which have lasted hundreds of years. And I'm afraid on this, Pippa, Ed Davey is well known for his stunts. He can't pull out a stunt like this. Yeah. This is a moment that requires serious, decisive leadership on our part as best as we can give it. We know, because we've seen it on Chagos, we've seen it on tariffs, that President Trump will say one thing one day, by 2-3 days later he's come around to a different position. So yes, he's got his opinions on what we have or haven't done, but I think that has to go beyond that, and we have to maintain that relationship which has preceded us by a long time and will succeed us.
Well, let's hope that we've not got a prolonged war until April, where it could be potentially embarrassing for the King, where it's actually engaging that, putting British servicemen and civilians at risk, and also exposing people here at home to the highest fuel energy prices and a cost of living crisis. So, could be really difficult.
OK, well, on that note, we will move on. It's 8:32. Let's get the news headlines on LBC from Matt Hewitt.
The Chancellor's warning inflation will rise because of the Middle East conflict. Rachel Reeves has told the Commons she won't tolerate any company exploiting the situation to make a profit. Prices on UK forecourts have risen sharply as the cost of Brent crude oil soars. Liz Kendall has told LBC the government is prepared to legislate every year to keep up with technology. The Tech Secretary says she expects companies to pay fines from Ofcom after it emerged just a fraction have been paid under the Online Safety Act. And Scotland's busiest railway stations expected to stay closed for the next couple of days at least. Investigators are trying to work out what caused a fire in a shop near Glasgow Central to spread. LBC weather, mostly cloudy tonight. Some scattered showers for the north and west, a low of 3. Cloudy for most tomorrow. Some rain in the west. And winds picking up, a high of 15 degrees.
This is LBC.
Idle money lies in your current account, picking crumbs out of its belly button, wondering, should I eat them? But when you start investing with Monzo, your money's always busy. It turns on regular investments, invests your spare change, and tops up your stocks and shares ISA. It even helps you make sense of risk and return. Monzo, the bank that gets your money moving. You could get back less than you invest. Monzo current account required. UK residents 18 plus. T's and C's apply.
At Amazon, over 50% of deliveries now come with less packaging or with no added packaging at all. It's a difference you'll notice on your doorstep, where you chat with friends, where your neighbour's daughter practices guitar, and where we deliver your new noise-cancelling headphones in the manufacturer's packaging. Ah, much better. Reduced packaging from Amazon. We're delivering change where it matters, on your doorstep, based on 2025 Amazon packaging data across the UK and EU.
I'm Natasha, and this is my NHS story. I went to the GP because I'd found a lump in my breast, and the GP referred me to a CDC centre. It was just really welcoming from the moment I arrived. To just be reassured all in one day was fantastic.
The government is opening new community diagnostic centres, with many already available 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, so the NHS can be there for all of us when we need it. Find your closest one at gov.uk/NHS Fit for the Future, available England-wide.
Leading Britain's conversation. Cross Question with Iain Dale. Alexa, send a comment to LBC.
8:35 on LBC. Justin Greening is here, founder of the Purpose Coalition, which is what? I mean, I do know, but...
We campaign on social mobility and we encourage employers to put strategies in place so they can make a difference.
Pippa Halings is Liberal Democrat energy spokesperson, and busy time at the moment for you, I imagine. And MP for South Cambridgeshire, Tom Skinner, founder of Nexus, a public relations agency, former advisor to a Conservative cabinet minister, and Darren Paffy, who's Labour MP for Southampton Itchen. Right, a text question from Scott. Current government spending on welfare per year is around £324 billion, but only around £60 billion per year is spent on defence. Do panel members think that it's sustainable for welfare spending to be 5 to 6 times more than defence spending? And if so, how should the government address this huge spending imbalance? Tom Skinner.
Clearly, it's not right that we're spending so much money on benefits, and we certainly need to increase our spending on defence. That's the last few weeks and months and years have proved that to be true. The challenge we have, I think, is that for quite a long time, and this predates Keir Starmer, this is not a party political point, we've had prime ministers who are quite happy to go and stand at NATO and make big commitments, stand in front of very nice, very expensive jets or ships and make big commitments on defence spending, whether it's 2%, 2.5%, 3%, 5%. But then aren't willing to come back to Downing Street and have that difficult conversation with the Chancellor and say, I've made this commitment, so in order to spend this on defence, we're going to cut X or whatever it is, whether it's defence or some other bill. So I think for far too long, Prime Ministers have been quite willing to make the commitments on defence, but without the real commitment to actually do the difficult domestic politics to justify it. And what we've ended up with is really parade ground defences, and we've got fantastic red arrows. We've got horses just half a mile from here parading up and down the streets. We've got brilliant looking troops outside Buckingham Palace. But what we haven't got is cyber security, missiles, ships, drones, the stuff that we really need. We've got all the stuff in defence that is for show without any of the stuff that really is currently making a difference. And actually that comes down to a succession of governments who have not taken the really, really difficult decision, had the conversation with the public about what we actually need to spend on defence, and a long time out in advance. Some of the defence spending takes decades to come on stream. If we're talking about ships, they can take 20, 30, 40 years before they're actually operational. And actually, that's too long a cycle for any one government.
Makes you wonder how we fought the Second World War, because I mean they were building ships at a rate of knots, weren't they, within a very short time, and yet now, given all the technology that we've got, it takes that long.
Yeah, 80 years ago, 100 years ago, we were far quicker at doing this stuff. The procurement of anything, but particularly the Ministry of Defence, is snail pace, and that's just the position we've got ourselves into. So we need to break through all that for sure, because we need to invest in this stuff much faster than we are doing.
Darren?
I mean, both those statements are true. We are spending a hell of a lot on welfare, and we're not spending enough on defence. What the government inherited was, by the admission of the former Tory Defence Secretary, a hollowed out and underfunded Defence Department. And our operation throughout the military was just not what it needs to be at any point, let alone at a point where we've got Russia sending its subs to pop up in the North Sea every 5 minutes. So we do need to make sure that actually the Labour government's plan to reduce the rate at which the welfare bill is rising actually happens. That has to happen in a practical way. We've got to get the NHS back on its feet so that people get the treatment and the therapy they need to be in a place to work. We need a completely revamped DWP and job centres, and that work is happening in order then that those who can work should, and those who can't get the security of welfare that goes into the future. What we then need to do, and I'm from Southampton, this week we celebrated the 90th anniversary of the first flight of the Spitfire. What happened when the Spitfire factory in Woolston was bombed was that they created shadow factories. This speaks to what Keir Starmer said about a whole of society approach to actually building up our defence capabilities, having smaller factories everywhere, having industries that grow on the basis of making sure that we are a robust and sovereign country who can defend our own territory and act with our allies on the international sphere. So we do need then to put that defence spending up. Already we've got 8 billion more going in this year alone, and that's a total of 62 billion. So we are starting that work to get to 2.6% of GDP next year, an ambition to get to 3% by the next Parliament.
If Rachel Reeves said to you, Darren, look, the only way that we can get the defence spending up to where we need to be is to cut 10% off the welfare budget, I don't know whether you would, but many of your colleagues would go spare, wouldn't they?
Potentially, yeah. I mean, we had what we had last year over some of the welfare reforms. I think the key thing is if it's workable. Some of what was put forward wasn't workable, and I was one of those who signed the reasoned amendment. I was on the naughty step. That's absolutely fine because I didn't see a programme that worked. If there was a set of reforms that actually worked, that supported people who are living for longer and they're living with more and more complex conditions, and that's just the reality of life, does that mean that all of them should be locked out of the workplace forever? No, absolutely not. We need to work on how workplaces can adapt to people with different needs and different abilities so that everyone can play their part. If you show us a reform package like that, I'll absolutely vote for it.
Pippa?
Yeah, so, as Liberal Democrats as well, we believe that there has to be an increase in defence spending and in the contributions to NATO as well. However, we don't see it as just this sort of from an individual country and nation as it all. We have to make sure that we're doing that together with our European allies. And
but we're not at the moment, Abby. That's the problem, in that we were the second highest spending nation on defence, and we're now the 12th. In NATO.
Yeah, so we absolutely have to up that, and that's what we're convinced. But we wouldn't have made the choice, I think, that the government made, Labour government made, which was to take that funding from the international development budget, which actually means that that money helps keep conflict and insecurity and climate insecurity in other countries at bay and doesn't cause further conflict that we have. So we should be using all the levers for peacekeeping and peace building, and international development budget is part of that. Again, what we should be doing, rather than looking at what we might cut, is, as you would expect me to say, but if we did have a bespoke EU-UK customs union, then we would be actually looking at further funding coming into the government that could be then spent on this. There are other ways to fund this.
You're goading me now. Justine?
I think if we want to be strong abroad, we've got to be strong at home. And fundamentally, that means tackling some of our homegrown problems that's holding back the economy, and it's a held-back economy that means we don't have the money that we want for defence. You know, it's interesting seeing what we're spending on defence. It's probably comparable to what we spend on primary and secondary education in the UK for the long term. And in the end, what we need is a comprehensive strategy on social mobility, getting lives on track. Welfare spend is too much about supporting lives that have got off track. We need to tilt that equation, and that isn't just about education, it's about employers taking a more strategic role in helping people progress in their lives and investing in them. And I think the lifelong learning entitlement can be part of how we would start to deliver that more seriously. But I also think there's much more that government can do. If you look, for example, in defence and the defence investment plan, you know, the recent decision to go ahead, thankfully, with the next generation of helicopters at Leonardo in Yeovil. You know, we waited too long for that. I think the Treasury really sat on that plan for a long, long time, and it was very clear to everyone that they needed to sign off on it. This is a company that is literally driving a whole regional economy whilst also providing a defence capacity that is absolutely in Britain's interest. And I think if we can start to marry up some of that defence investment and broader investment, whether it's transport or anything else, on growth and jobs and driving connections to opportunity. So no cutting of welfare? No, I mean, I personally, you know, is this controversial? I would have kept the two-child But that's like a drop in the ocean. That's no,
4 or 5 billion pounds.
The point is, in a sense, broadening out the welfare system at a time when actually what we need to be doing is moving in the other direction. That's what I'm saying, is you can't kind of make your challenge bigger when you need to move in the other direction. Okay. But fundamentally, it's about having a short-term, set of difficult questions, whether it's around winter fuel, whether it's around any other aspect of welfare, and whether we need to target that more versus a longer-term strategy on how can we stop lives going off track. And we've currently got triple the national average of youth unemployment. Something like 38% of young people between 16 and 24 are economically inactive. These are experiences that will persist into longer-term adulthood. Those are the issues we absolutely have to get ahead of if they're not to make this situation we just talked about, that Scott's talked about, even worse.
We have listeners with very long memories. Remember our discussion about whether the Queen's state visit should be cancelled? Well, Jack says, may I remind the panel that LBJ declined a state invitation from Queen Elizabeth II because we refused to support the war in Vietnam. Jack in Stoke-on-Trent. Well,
I celebrate that long memory.
And you'll be deploying that argument in many...
Thank you. I've now noted that one. I've noted that one. Thank you very much.
Right, more questions to come. It's 8:45.
This is LBC.
My name's Mark and this is my NHS story. The sensation in my neck was painful all the time. Once I spoke to my GP, they referred me to my CDC. They got me in very, very quickly. The amount of pain I went through for something so easy, why hadn't I done this 4 months before?
The government is opening new community diagnostic centres, with many already available 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, so the NHS can be there for all of us when we need it. Find your closest one at gov.uk/NHS Fit for the Future, available England-wide.
It's hard to concentrate when you can't shake a health worry. It can feel like there's a wall between you and the rest of the world. Like you can't be fully present.
Hello, AXA Health. How can I help?
If something's playing on your mind, AXA Health support line nurses and counsellors are ready to listen day or night. For cover that cares, search AXA Health Insurance. 24/7 health support line available to all members. Treatment for pre-existing conditions is not covered.
Listeners, we interrupt the airwaves to share an incredible discovery. The reason why Britain hasn't been so great of late is because the country hasn't been eating enough Weetabix. We must get to work in rebuilding Great Britain, bix by bix. By delivering Weetabix to whoever plans the traffic diversions, to delivery drivers who can't seem to find your house, and people who don't stack the dishwasher properly. To Britain, we must say, have you had your Weetabix?
It's time to scale up that fishmonger business, Anne. With free day-to-day online banking from Virgin Money, you'll be a big fish in no time. Now that's a real catch of the day. Open Virgin Money's M account for business now. UK excludes NI, Channel Islands and Isle of Man. 18 plus fees apply for chaps and international payments. Terms and exclusions apply. Backed by the current account switch service. Virgin Money is a trading name of Clydesdale Bank PLC.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
8:47. Tom Skinner, Justine Greening, Darren Paffy and Pippa Halings are with us taking your questions. Here's one from Max. No one from Elon Musk's X, i.e. Twitter, as it used to be known, bothered to turn up to a key government meeting about stopping violence against women and girls and the role which AI chatbots play in encouraging that violence. Does this show that the internet will always be a Wild West which no single government is ever going to have the power to regulate? It's interesting because I saw a representative from X on a television programme. Was it today or yesterday? You think, well, they might have turned up to this. It is, of course, LBC's Online Safety Day today, and we have in the next hour an hour with Baroness Bibon-Kidron, who's a real expert on this, so we're looking forward to your calls on that. Justine, let's start with you.
I think it's very hard for Musk to take a role as he does in constantly telling everyone what he thinks should happen, across the whole sphere of our lives. And yet to then miss an opportunity to influence when he could actually be sat around, or his representatives could be sat around the table. It doesn't get any closer than that in terms of influencing government policy. And I think it underlines the difficulty that governments around the world have in regulating what's called big tech. Up until now, power, whether it's economic, military, etc., has always been the nation state. Now it's these corporations, and we just haven't been able to catch up with that. And I think it is extremely difficult. At least here, I think the Online Safety Act, whilst, not perfect, is a step forward. The big question is going to be how effectively Ofcom can enforce it and in a sense, how it develops over time.
Pippa.
Yeah, so thanks, Max, for that question, because we need to regulate big tech, as Justine's been saying, and the online platforms. And we can't have that Wild West, because actually what we're talking about is that would then allow long-term harm to children's mental well-being. And as a mother, I find that really, really disturbing. So I wouldn't... when my son was younger, I wouldn't have gone into a shop and bought, a gaming video that was adult rated, and I wouldn't have, looked for adult film content for my children. And yet that is what they are being exposed to every day now with unregulated social media. So what the Liberal Democrats are putting forward is it's a world first. It's using the idea of film rating for age rating for online platforms, not just social media, but also the user-to-user services. So we looked at, as Max was saying, about the chatbots, as well as WhatsApp, for example, so that we're not just doing an outright stop on them, but we're including
What good would
more.
that do? I mean, how would you rate WhatsApp, and what effect would that have?
Because what we need to actually see is that you show parents and put them back in control of what an age rated would be for certain online platforms. So whether that would be 13, 16, 18, and really showing the tech giants and the online platforms would have to say, according to how harmful their material is, how addictive their material is, what that age rating is. And Ofcom, we are suggesting, would provide that framework, just as is happening for films.
So you're not you don't agree with the proposals from both Labour and the Conservatives, and indeed Reform, that you should ban social media altogether for under 16s?
So we think we have to future-proof this. And so it needs to go...
Banning it would do, wouldn't it?
Well, no, it would only ban at the moment social media. So it would leave out what Max is talking about, which is the chatbots. It would leave out... So what would happen is you wouldn't be able to use a family WhatsApp, for example. You would just be banning it all completely. So we think a more an approach with a framework based on the principle.
Okay.
However, I'm going to the votes just now. As soon as we finish this programme, I'll run across to the votes. And we will support the amendment that's coming forward to ban. We're putting our own amendment to it saying there should be age rating for that. It shouldn't be a complete ban, but with age rating. However, we've told the families, the charities, the campaign organisations that we won't play political football with this. We know that there's great support for an online ban, and therefore we will be supporting the Lord Nash amendment this evening.
Darren?
I think I was, and I don't often feel young, but I was probably one of the last generations to have an internet-free and phone-free and certainly smartphone-free childhood. And of course, when the internet emerged and when all these kind of the regulations that have sat around it for far too long were first created, it was a very different place. It was about knowledge, it was about exploration, it was about finding things out. The balance has very definitely tipped now to it doing more harm than good, particularly to our young people. So I think if it is a Wild West, we have got to reassert the fact that nation states, we might be smaller and have less resource than many of these big tech companies, but we are still the ones who get to decide what happens to our young people. So I'm one of those who signed a letter asking for more action. We are seeing more action. It is a case of when and how. It's not about if we take action. So many of the things that are going into the Children's Wellbeing in Schools Bill, the big consultation that we're having with the country at the moment, that the Technology Secretary has announced, these show that we are taking that action. And we've already shown that if we flex our muscles on this, as we did with Grok, then change can come. So I think we need to go with the momentum that there is on this.
But would you be supportive of a complete ban, which would mean that those elements of the online platforms at the moment still produce that learning and that exploration wouldn't be allowed, up until 16? So if you had a principle that said if you had age rating, and therefore you would have a very, very, structured, cautious approach.
It's about the structure of it as well. So, all of the things that we seem to have got into our heads that we can only ever learn or know or experience through social media, with its design doom scrolling and infinite scrolling and all those other things, apps where stranger adults can get in touch with children that they've never met before. I mean, that's just ridiculous. No, there are things, there's still the old-fashioned internet. Now, I talk about going on a website, and my daughter tells me I'm a right oldie. But actually, that is still there. That is the place where actually we could still harness the good that is out there and start protecting our children from some of the dangers that are there. And I don't buy the kind of cliff edge argument. We don't say about driving that, there's a cliff edge and it would be too difficult to legislate. We still legislate for it. And smoking and things like that, we reckon, of course, some kids are going to get around it. Some kids are going to smoke earlier than 18. That doesn't mean that we say, well, we're not going to introduce a law against smoking because it's too difficult to implement. Okay. So I really think it has a place.
Tom Skinner, you were a special advisor at the DCMS when this legislation was going through, I think.
Yes,
Has it worked?
Well, I got appointed to DCMS and then DCIT about the time that Elon Musk bought X, or Twitter, and then turned it to X. Pretty much the first thing he did was strip out huge amounts of the safety teams and the government affairs team. So it's not a surprise that no one turned up to the Technology Secretary's meeting, because there's not much of that team left, which made it very difficult at the time. One of the things we had to combat was the response to October the 7th and a lot of very, very illegal, dangerous content that was on X at the time, and actually engaging with X at the time was almost impossible. So X is slightly unique, I think. A lot of the other technology platforms are much better to engage with, and much more constructive than X is. And certainly when I was in government, we found very, very constructive working relationships with a lot of the tech platforms. Some are better than others. That's true.
But how's the legislation work? Because we hear that Ofcom, since the Online Safety Act came into effect, they've issued £3 million worth of fines, which seems very paltry, but recouped just £55,000.
Yeah, it's almost
toothless.
So one of the things that the Secretary of State I work for, Michelle Donlan, one of the things she said when we passed the legislation, which took years, I should say it's the proudest achievement I had when I was in government. I think the Online Safety Act is a world-leading piece of legislation. That's not to say it's perfect. As soon as it became law, we said we're going to have to look to legislate again, because the internet is moving so fast, this technology is moving so fast, and there is no way that the government can keep up. It drew a line in the sand. It was world-leading legislation at the time. It was the first piece of online legislation that there had been, but it definitely has to evolve. It didn't take into account AI at all, and this was only a couple of years ago. So it needs to evolve very fast. But I think, and this is where I disagree with my party on it, I don't think that bans are the way to go because of the unintended consequences of banning social media for under 16s. I think there's a lot of work to be done on education, on working with families, on working in schools to teach people how to engage in a positive and healthy way online. Banning it, I think, firstly creates a sort of sense of excitement if people manage to get onto it. It also lets some of the technology platforms off the hook because they can hide behind the fact if under 16s shouldn't be on there at all, it means they've got no responsibility for the content that's on there, because if a 15-year-old sees the content, they can say, well, it's not our fault, they shouldn't be on there, it's the parents' fault or it's someone else's fault. So actually holding them to account and saying, well, you know the age of these people, if they're 13, 14, 15, 16, you have to show them age-appropriate content is absolutely essential. Okay. And we looked at bans in great detail, and it's a fine balance, but I came down firmly on the side of banning is the wrong answer.
Right, let's finish off with our fun question from Nicole in Sutton Coldfield. The royal town of Sutton Coldfield, as Andrew Mitchell would insist that I call it. If the King doesn't get to go and see Trump next month and maybe gets a little holiday instead, where would you suggest that he goes to and why? Justine?
I'd definitely suggest the Southampton, Devon. Don't quite make it to Cornwall as usual, King Charles. Just stop a bit earlier and check it out because it's absolutely beautiful. It's just beautiful coastline, lovely beaches, great people, fantastic pubs. What more could you want? And you don't need to get on a plane. I mean, why waste time flying when you can just do a wonderful staycation?
Tom?
I would send him on a plane. I think I'd send him on an EasyJet plane in the middle seat, and I think I'd send him to Benidorm because it would be great content for his social media, for us, one thing, to bring these conversations together. And also it'd be quite eye-opening for the King to see life in Benidorm, Brits abroad in Benidorm.
You clearly don't like the King very much.
Oh, he's fabulous. I just think he'd enjoy Benidorm.
Do you, really? I suspect the Queen might enjoy it more than he would.
He might be right.
Darren?
I mean, I'm obviously going to say Southampton, partly because I've got some form in having to defend the place recently. The Telegraph did a piece on the 20 biggest cities in the UK and put Southampton bottom. So I demanded that their reporter come back, and we took him round, and lots of people showing the best of our food places, our culture, our going out. We've got the best preserved medieval walls. Obviously, we've got a fantastic championship football club as well, right on the coast, really well connected. And so we got the Telegraph to see sent. So I think the King's endorsement would be very, very welcome.
I'm just thinking, I don't think I've ever been to Southampton. Isn't
the best thing about Southampton is the A27 to Portsmouth.
That's so
There's a similar joke about Lancashire and Yorkshire.
Well, we know that the King, like David Attenborough, is a massive champion ambassador for nature. And so I would invite him, let him go to any of the chalk streams across the UK, because I was able to present a bill last week, which was to get the government to nominate our chalk streams in the UK as a Natural World Heritage Site under UNESCO. And if we could get his endorsement for that, and he could be beside nothing more British than a sparkling river or chuckling chalk stream.
You see, this is why you're such a brilliant politician, Pippa, because you managed to get your own pet subject into the fun question.
I should do a text vote.
Kudos for that.
What do the voters think?
Thank you all very much indeed for taking part in tonight's Cross Question. On tomorrow's Cross Question, we have the Labour MP and Jury Trials Reforms rebel Carl Turner, Conservative peer and former Brexit negotiator Lord David Frost, the Daily Express associate editor Sam Lister, and the Guardian columnist Zoe Williams. That's going to be a spicy one, I suspect. Right, coming up in the next hour, we're going to be joined by Baroness Biban Kidron. There is nothing about online safety that Biban doesn't know. You will have heard her on the programme before. She'll be taking your calls, questions, comments. Have we actually really made much progress since the passing of the Online Safety Act? Was it really the landmark that everybody said it was? I mean, it was the first piece of legislation of its kind. How should it be amended? How should it be strengthened? Your views next. 0345 6060 973.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 9 o'clock, the Chancellor's warning of a rise in inflation as the cost of oil soars and petrol and diesel prices creep up as a consequence of the Middle East conflict. Donald Trump's holding a news conference in the next hour after saying he's not happy with Iran's new choice of supreme leader. In the last few minutes, he's told House Republicans the conflict is a short-term excursion. Israel's ambassador to the UN, Danny Danon, says a change of leadership in the Islamic Republic will make no difference.
It is the same ideology, the same nuclear ambitions, the same ballistic missiles, the same terror proxies. My advice to Tehran's new leadership: look at what happened to those who thought they could threaten the US and Israel.
5 members of the Iranian women's football team have been granted asylum in Australia. Tony Burke, Australia's Home Affairs Minister, told reporters the women were welcome to stay in the country and its government had agreed to provide humanitarian visas. MPs are debating whether under-16 should be banned from social media. The idea is to make them safer, although there are fears it'll push them to darker parts of the web. The Shadow Education Secretary, Laura Trott, wants a complete ban on devices in schools. She read testimony from a girl who says, aged around 12, her friends would receive multiple explicit images on social media.
One said she got at least 10 in the morning. She'd pull up her phone and show us by scrolling through them just because it was funny that they would just send it. This happened after she added someone on Snapchat that she didn't know. Others had them too. Looking back now, I remember pretending to find everything funny just to fit in. But actually, I felt really confused and grossed out at some of the content being shared.
Snapchat's previously said it removes accounts involved in such behaviour and reports serious cases to law enforcement. The government says an extra 2,500 new dentists could be registered every year before the end of the decade. The number of places at dental school per year is increasing, and it'll become easier for overseas dentists to practice here. And Scotland's First Minister says there is enormous damage after a fire next to Glasgow Central Station. John Swinney also says the Scottish Government is willing to help the City Council with the immediate, significant and unexpected financial consequences of the fire. The station will remain closed tomorrow. In the city, the FTSE 100 closed down 35 points at 10,249. The pound buys $1.33 and €1.15. LBC weather. After a cloudy night, grey for most of tomorrow, some rain in the west, winds picking up, and a high of 15 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Matt Hewitt.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale.
4 minutes past 9 is the time on LBC. Welcome to the programme if you've just joined us. I know a lot of people do at 9 o'clock. You really should join us at 7, though, because you've missed a couple of great hours. Now, today is LBC's Online Safety Day. There is legislation going through Parliament affecting online safety. I think it's going through the Commons tonight. It's the so-called Nash Amendment. If you don't know what that is, you should go back and listen to Andrew Marr's programme because he interviewed Lord Nash on it. But with us, we have Baroness Biban Kidron. You remember last year she joined us for a phone, appeared several times on the programme to talk about online safety. And basically, Biban, welcome, by the way, there's very little about this subject you don't know, is there? Which I'm very grateful for because I wouldn't class it as one of my areas of particular expertise. Now, we want to take calls from our listeners if they've got questions for you, if they've got comments on online safety, particularly if you've maybe had some sort of experience with online safety, whether it's you, your children, your family over the past year or two that you'd like to tell us about or get Biban's views on and how you think the legislation needs to be changed. Because as Tom Skinner was explaining on Cross Question, the actual act doesn't even mention AI.
No.
And you think AI has sort of crept up on us and we're all trying to get to terms with it, but I'm not sure many of us have yet.
It's funny because I saw Tom on my way in and I said, you do remember I had amendments on AI and the government wouldn't let me have them at the time. And he said, yes. And I said, I've got amendments right now for next week on chatbots and they're not going to let me have those either. So I think that there is this sort of idea that we're always behind. But there are people in Parliament who are always pushing the envelope. And I think governments and departments are very, very loath to go ahead of what they feel safe. So I think there's a political gap. And I think you're noticing, and I've listened to a lot of what's gone on today, and you are really hearing the public is ahead of the government.
Yeah.
And we really need to deal with the public now.
But this is nothing new, though, is it, in a way? Because I think whatever technology has been brought in over the last few decades, government has always been behind the curve, because within the DCMS or the Department of Digital, whatever it's called now, I don't think there would be the same level of expertise as there would be, for example, about the oil industry in the business department or the rail industry in the transport department. It's all a bit new, and that bank of knowledge just isn't there.
I think it's an interesting point, but, governments have responsibilities as well as history. And I think that the responsibility now is to understand the digital world. So they're bringing in AI in education. They're bringing in, they're letting our creative industries suffer under AI, and we've got the problem of kids. And actually, they don't have the option of not understanding, in my view. And there are many, many experts that they don't necessarily consult with out there in the world. And there's a little bit too much lobbying from the big tech guys.
And you're trying to redress that balance in a way, aren't you? I mean, you're a crossbench peer, but you're also founder of the Five Rights Foundation, which campaigns to promote and protect children's rights in the digital sphere. And I mean, let's face it, there aren't going to be many people necessarily doing that because it's not in their commercial interest to do so.
No, I think that's right. And I think that what we actually have to say, children first, commercial interest second. And there is a sort of a misnomer out here, which is that we've got to deregulate and let them all in and so on. But actually, we're not deregulating so much as allowing their terms and conditions to be our new regulation. So it's quite a sort of a dangerous thing, because you're losing power as they gain it. And I think you can see it all across the world. And now lots and lots of countries are pushing back. I mean, I was delighted. I got a call on Saturday from Indonesia and said, "We've just passed your law in Indonesia. We have 90 million children. It is one of the most populous countries in the world. We care about our children and we are following. Hurrah." And that was the message, And I think that we have to stop seeing ourselves as a sort of isolated little country. There are millions of people around the world who want a different settlement with tech, and we have to show leadership in that and not be frightened.
We'll come to your calls in a moment, 0345 6060 973. But let's talk about what has happened since the passing of the Online Safety Act. Has it proved fit for purpose in your view?
Well, I think there's a few problems with it. I mean, I would back Tom up and say, at that moment, after 8 years and 4 governments or whatever, it were 4 prime ministers, finally we got it over the line. And I think it has been very influential. I do think that the regulator has been disappointing. I think you've had a lot of calls to that effect today. I do think the regulator has suffered from not having enough political will behind them, and that might be changing now.
Disappointing in what way?
So I think that, we heard this morning that, there's so many fines and we've got this many inquiries into different companies. But we've also heard that your journalists were able to go on, pretend to be 13 and immediately get a deluge of material. And actually, about half an hour ago, when I was over in Parliament, I got an email from a specialist police force, let's call them that, who are really, really worried about TikTok, and sent me some evidence about grooming on TikTok and predators on TikTok, and sort of algorithmically showing particular groups of girls. And I'm like, how can this still be happening if they're doing a good job on systems?
Because the interesting thing is, it isn't happening in China.
No.
It's a Chinese company, but it is happening here. It's happening in other European countries. It's happening in America. but China regulates it, so it doesn't happen in China.
Yeah, and let me just say something, and maybe it'll be controversial with people who ring into your programme, Ian, but, this is not about freedom of speech here. This is about, trying to keep people engaged and algorithmic recommendations that are pulling people into loops that keeps people online. And that is what they're doing. And it's not that they are immoral. It's that they're amoral. They don't care if it's porn that keeps them, if it's self-harm that keeps them, if it's suicide that keeps. They don't care. They just want to keep people online, and it's unacceptable. And I think that we need 2 or 3 different things now. We need to change the enforcement process so we get to business disruption before we get to fines. Stop them working. They'll be in the office of Ofcom in a nanosecond. I think we need individual complaints so people have someone to go to. It's absolutely unconscionable that a parent who thinks their child is being groomed has no one to go to in the country to help them, especially if it's a chatbot and they can't go to the police. And I think we really need to actually just not deal with this sort of long-form legal situation, but say we interrupt the service first and then we'll talk about
what do you mean by interrupting the service?
Business disruption. And Ofcom has...
What you mean sort of, OK, Twitter or X, you're going to be out of action for 2 days?
Yeah, and just to be clear, I wouldn't have put Twitter out of action. I would have put Grok out of action. Yeah, the particular problem that is emerging, and there were thousands of child sexual abuse images created by Grok in that very short period, and much, much more intimate image abuse of women. So what I'm saying is, I don't care what people say on X. They can get on with it. But actually something that is deliberately there to harm, humiliate and hurt women and children, absolutely not. That's against our law.
Because, the algorithms, it's a word it's an ugly word. And as you say, they're intended to keep you on. And look, I don't know how much experience you have of this, but when I leave this studio today, I'll go home on the train, which is about a 45-minute journey, and I will spend much of it scrolling through Instagram reels. And it's incredibly addictive. And once you sort of, I don't know whether they do it on the time that you spend on a particular one or what, but you find that if there's a particular type of reel that you like, you're going to be served with lots of others like that.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily an unhealthy thing, but if there is something that's sort of slightly on the edge that you like, then you sort of find that you get loads of them. And if you're 12, 13, 14, 15, that can lead to very dangerous situations.
No, it absolutely can. And I think that
I just get dog ones.
Yeah. Well, 45 minutes of dog ones. That's quite a journey.
Not quite, but...
I think the important thing...
That's dog, not dogging, by the way.
Yeah.
I just want to make that clear.
We are going to get some funny calls. I think I want to just make clear an algorithm is a neutral thing. Yeah, in and of itself, an algorithm could actually show you well-being things and be, and keep you going on that loop. In my case, my addiction is the news, I'm afraid. And so I endlessly get into loops of news. And when I've seen it on all 5 different sites, and I think, really, I didn't want to know that in the first place. And I'm still looking. But I went to Germany to the big tech conference a few weeks ago. And one of the big 5 companies, one of the engineers from there said to me, oh, yeah, we're designing on 8 seconds. And I went, 8 seconds of what? A dopamine hit every 8 seconds. That is literally there, like Pavlov's dog, to keep us going.
Well, they play on your emotions, don't they? They want you to laugh. They want you to cry. In my case, that happens usually on the train on every journey home, and I get some very strange looks sometimes.
Yeah.
And you do. You can only judge from your own experience. And I love it. I really love it. It introduces new music to me. They put comedians on that I've never heard of, and therefore that I'm likely to go and see. There's a guy called Matt Rife. Have you ever come across him? I mean, really, really funny, but quite on the edge. And I absolutely love it, but I can see the danger of it.
Well, I think there's two big things here. One is the big lie is that we have to give up the good for the bad, and we don't. We really don't. There is a very big difference between sending explicit or violent sexual content to a 15-year-old boy and sending you a bit of slightly outre comedy. There is, and I think that as a culture and as a media personality, that difference. And I think you would not, you wouldn't breach that line here. You might be naughty, but you wouldn't do something that hurts someone here at LBC. So I think, first of all, there are rules that we have in our culture and in our broadcast that actually do keep people safe and do keep things kind of fun without actually getting too heavy-handed. So I think we can have the good stuff. And I think the other thing is that, that we really have to decide whether we are going to operate our own rules in the UK or not. And if we are going to have our own rules, then we got to stand behind them strongly. And I think that's what people are asking for out there.
Singer recommendation from Instagram Reels, Pedro Santos, I Don't Know Me, new single. Go out and stream it. You won't regret it. See, I've been influenced, haven't I?
You've been influenced.
Right, we'll take your calls in a moment. 0345 6060 973. Particularly, I think if you're a parent, if you've got a question for BBAM, but also we want to hear your experiences. Do you feel a little bit helpless that maybe you're an older parent and you haven't grown up in the social media age? You have no clue how to control social media input for your children who may be 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. You know as a parent you've got responsibility, but you don't know how to exercise it. 18 minutes past 9.
This is LBC.
I'm going to tell you exactly what you need to do. Dominate your finances.
Sunday morning, listening to questionable financial advice from the FinTok bros on his social feed.
Drowning in green. Scale, 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 scale.
This is the moment Isaac chose to search Barclays Life Skills, get some better money intel, and save up for that new skateboard. We're helping young people become money confident. Search Barclays Life Skills. Barclays, backing your future.
Hi, I'm looking for a pair of jeans.
Right. Low slung, slouchy, wide leg, barrel leg, curved leg, flared, straight or skinny.
Blue?
Fashion. It's hard to keep on top of. Other things, like the upcoming changes to renting, are a bit easier. As a landlord, you will need to get on top of these important changes. They will affect how you manage your tenancies. Act now. Read the guidance at gov.uk/renting is changing.
We asked patients at Great Ormond Street Hospital what makes someone special.
They can make me laugh lots and lots and lots and lots. They have to like arts and crafts. Their favourite food is chocolate cake. They might be a magician, so they can magically make me better. They will be kind.
Does that sound like you? Be someone special and leave a gift in your will to Gosh Charity. Search Gosh Legacy for your Gifts in Wills guide.
Thank you.
Iain Dale. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Alexa, send a comment to LBC.
20 past 9 on LBC. If you've been listening to LBC throughout the day, you'll have heard every presenter talking about Online Safety Day, because we all believe that it's a really, really important subject, and LBC as a station has decided that this is something that we're going to not just sort of for a day or two, but over the course of years, we're going to concentrate on this because we know how important it is to many people. And that's why we have Baroness Biban Kidron with us. She's a crossbench peer and knows all about online safety. if I describe you as the country's leading authority, I don't think that's an exaggeration. I don't expect you to say, oh, no. Well, no, I don't expect you to agree with me, but I think you are, which is why we keep having you back. So we want you to ask any question or give any concern that you have over the course of the next 40 minutes. 0345 6060 973. Alison is a first-time caller in Bromley. Alison, hello.
Hey, you're right.
Very well, thank you. What would you like to say?
No, we're talking about the online social stuff. I've got an 11-year-old. And when it comes to online social media, it's actually quite scary. Like, really scary.
In what way?
Well, when it comes to, when we was younger, and when it comes to, how can I say it? When we was younger, it would be something silly, like we would change cards and stuff with each other. But now,
Pokemon.
Yeah, like Pokemon, or what was it?
Top Trumps.
Pogs or stuff like that. But what we're saying is what we was our normal, it's not their normal. So when I'm saying about the kids, it's really awful right now. I mean, I was on the bus and there was a woman with her kid who actually was doing a hate page about a kid that she didn't like.
What, creating a hate page on a social media platform?
Yeah.
An adult woman was doing that?
No, that was her child that was doing it. So that's what there's so much that we need to think about, because you got the parents that are trying to talk to their kids, and you've got the teachers that are trying to talk to the kids. The kids don't listen. They don't want to talk to their parents. They don't want to listen to their parents. They don't want to listen to their teachers.
So what are your concerns for your own daughter?
Well, fat shaming. Kids can be really awful. They can be awful. And the worst thing is online, when they go on social media, when they come home and they get on their phones, it's really sad, because it's on Roblox as well. And as well, when you've got predators as well.
And do you feel in control of what your daughter's doing on the internet?
I'm lucky enough to have that relationship with my daughter, when she will come out and say, this person's saying this to me on Roblox, or this person's saying to me on Instagram. So she'll have random people that will say, oh, I really like your context. I really like what you're doing. I can do more for you if you can, add me. That's the problem. That's what I'm saying. We want. The problem is that all of our kids want to be part of this social media stuff, when it's Roblox, Instagram, Facebook, whatever. I mean, Facebook's nothing to the kids nowadays. It's nothing.
I've never heard of Roblox. What's that?
It's Roblox. Roblox is this thing where all the parents have to pay like £10, £20, £20, so that they can have something, so that they can build up their Roblox.
Okay, let's get some reaction from Beeban to what you've said there, Alison.
Well, I mean, Alison, I guess the first thing I say is congratulations for having that relationship with your daughter that should raise things with you, because I think it is really important. And I speak to a lot of young people, and I think one of the things that they say is that they actually find it quite difficult to raise things with adults, and that adults don't always take seriously the things that they do raise, and the adults sort of get distracted by their own worries. So I really want to congratulate you on feeling that you've got a relationship with your daughter that can encompass a conversation about this. I mean, you've raised so many different issues, but I'll just pick up on two things. I think the first thing is that I think a lot of parents think Roblox is very safe and that their kids are just gaming and perhaps don't understand how it works and how strangers can meet in this virtual world and some of the things that go on there. So I think it is something that parents should look out for and be really aware of who is talking to your kid, what they're saying to your kid, what they're doing. I've seen some really horrible things, and I think that that is. I'm glad you mentioned it. Put it that way, and I think that that's something that this new consultation that the government has got is actually going to look quite closely at gaming as a place where predators are hanging out. I think the other thing that you raised that I'd just like to respond to is the thing of bullying. And I just want to sort of say to people who are listening here that the young people who I speak to, and I have spoken to hundreds and thousands of them over a period of 15 years, I mean, really, really many thousands, and they have a couple of worries. They have the worry about being bullied. Some of the people who are bullied bully back, and then they don't like their own behaviour. But the vast majority say that they feel very upset and they feel shame about watching other people being bullied and not intervening. So I think that parents obviously worry about their own kid being bullied, but actually a lot of their time, young people are anxious about what they see and not wanting to tell. And I think that is a conversation that a parent could have with their child and just say, do they see stuff? Are they comfortable with it? Is there anything they can do? Are there some new habits? And finally, let me just say, the kids are willing to come off and do other things, but you have to let them come off together. It's no, I noticed you said your daughter's 11. She shouldn't be on a lot of the platforms that names you mentioned because they're 13 plus, but she won't come off unless a group come off. So I think that sometimes getting together in a bit of a friendship group or in a gang of parents and saying, okay, we're going to take a break for a while and we're all going to do this different thing is quite helpful.
Alison, thank you very much for that. I don't know if you listened to any cross question, but the Liberal Democrat MP, Pippa Heylings, was saying that their policy is to have a sort of cinema-style rating system for internet sites and social media. I couldn't see how that could work. Is that something that you think could work?
I think it's really important to understand there's no silver bullet. It doesn't harm. So if you're an active parent who wants to know whether this is a good age, you can go on sites like Common Sense Media or I think the BBFC do it on some sites, and check if it's suitable and go, oh, great, it isn't, I'm not going to allow it. But I think it's really, really difficult for parents to individually manage it. And I think that the government does have a role. The tech companies definitely have a role, regulator has a role, and parents have a role.
And talking of tech companies, you've got a book coming out later in the year, which I'll ask you about after the news. It's 9:30 on LBC. Let's go to the news headlines with Matt Hewitt.
The Chancellor's warning inflation will likely go up if the Middle East conflict doesn't come to a swift conclusion. Donald Trump said he's not happy with Iran's new choice of supreme leader, but has also reportedly called the war with Iran pretty much complete. A researcher has told LBC TikTok's algorithm can leave young people with eating disorders feeling like they couldn't walk away from harmful content. MPs have been debating this evening whether under-16s should be banned from social media. There's much more on Online Safety Day on the LBC app. And Scotland's First Minister says it's a huge relief there are no serious injuries from the fire next to Glasgow's Central Station. But the damage is enormous and the disruption will be significant. The station will remain closed tomorrow. LBC weather, mostly cloudy tonight, some scattered showers for the north and west, a low of 3. Cloudy for most tomorrow, some rain in the west and winds picking up, a high of 15 degrees.
Weekdays from 7 a.m.
This is taxation without representation.
Straight to the point.
Do you get giddy with all these U-turns?
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
Lucky he gets up in the morning, really, isn't it?
Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app. Download it now from your app store. LBC.
Jay here knows that Zoopla can provide valuations for any home in the UK, so we can see what that new couple across the road might have paid.
Ooh la la.
Have a nose at what the curtain twitchers next door could sell for. And even see what his own place is worth.
Cool, look at that.
Plus, Zoopla lets you find and compare local estate agents if you do decide to sell up. Think of all those new neighbours you'll be able to snoop on, Jay. If you want to know, just ask Zoopla.
JP Morgan Personal Investing gives you the clarity to make more informed decisions on your investments, which is great because right now something else just became crystal clear. Your kid just outgrew the kids menu. Now he's ordering a truffle gnocchi? You consider making a don't gnocchi it till you try it joke, but now's not the time. Now's the time to grow his world, one bite at a time. Search JP Morgan Personal Investing. Invest with clarity. Capital at risk.
At TfL, we're helping make roads safer. We're continuing to roll out lower speed limits because 20 miles per hour roads have already seen 24% fewer collisions causing death or serious injury. We're also improving junctions to help keep you safe and improving visibility for our bus drivers with new wing mirror cameras. Search TfL Improvement Plan. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters. Comparison of collisions data before and after implementation of 20 miles per hour speed limit.
Iain Dale on LBC.
9:33 on LBC. Baroness Biban Kidron is with us, and she has got a book coming out later in the year. It's called Users: What Big Tech Doesn't Want You to Know and What to Do About It. Right, 30-second elevator pitch.
It really looks at the history of how we got here and how we didn't see them coming and how they have used lobbying to stay where they are. And really, it argues that we've got to just treat them like other companies and stop this tech exceptionalism. That's what it's
Why
called.
don't we?
I think they got very big and very powerful, and they told some really important stories like, you know, they represent freedom, they represent progress, they represent prosperity. And I think in the book, I argue, actually, they have curtailed a lot of freedom. They have been quite regressive, certainly about childhood. And actually, you know, the prosperity has all gone to them. So, you know.
Right, let's go to a text from Matt Morrison. I find this the most difficult question. Where is the line between the... Oh, he's called in now. Oh, well, let's go to him then. It's Matt in Manchester. Sorry, Matt. I nearly stole your thunder there. What would you like to tell us?
I was just saying it's a really difficult position, this control of the internet. I don't offer any answers, obviously, to that. Because you've got the position now, almost where it's a free internet where people can do as they wish, to obviously going to a point where it's like a Chinese state of, you know, they control what you can see, access to the external world outside your country, to complete surveillance of everything you do. And it's just a really difficult position of where the line's drawn. And no one's going to argue about implementing things that would protect children. I've got kids of my own that are a nightmare on the internet.
What do you mean a nightmare?
Well, just scrolling all day. It's really hard to get them off the scrolling, and I do believe it's affected them. You know, the way they concentrate and are able to not self-regulate and drag themselves off it. But on the other hand, you see the issues like the Twitter policing that has not gone down well, where people are getting locked up and sentenced for, you know, what would be an opinion rather than, you know, any type of incitement or whatnot. So I just find it a really difficult area to legislate against, I suppose, and completely banning apps or, you know, VPNs, for example. I know that was one of the other ways of getting around the kids getting on the apps is going to be very difficult and will affect everyone else as well.
That is an interesting one, isn't it? Stay there, Matt. We'll come back to you. That is an interesting one because, ever since video recorders were first invented, kids have been more adept at using technology than their parents have. And if a child understands what a VPN is, then, any amount of regulation is lost, isn't it?
Well, I think there's a couple of things here. First of all, it's what are we saying is normal? Right? So if you think back to the old days where, we may have cheated to get into a club before we were 18, or we may have gone to the local
not.
pub. Possibly. Couldn't possibly say.
Friends of yours, obviously.
Yeah, friends of mine. Or other friends of mine who might have reached to the top shelf and got a magazine before they were the right age.
No idea what you're talking about.
What happened then was a child knew that they were transgressing. They knew they were doing something that the adult world, on the whole, was saying was not right. And that thing of transgressing is actually quite important. What we're doing now is we're normalising people eating 200 calories a day. We're normalising violent sex for young boys who haven't even had a kiss behind the shed. We're normalising things and we're not sending the message. So I think, and I always try and say to people, it's much, much more important that we have the rules, that they're very visible, that the kids can see them, and a percentage of them, and it's actually quite a small percentage, transgress, but that they know they're doing it. So I think that's one thing. I think Matt's bigger problem is the bigger problem about where does the line get drawn. But I would argue this, that actually nobody is ganging up to get Wikipedia off the internet. And Wikipedia, in a way, represents what we wanted the internet to be, which is even, communal, and so on. But I have to tell you, everything you don't want your kid to see is somewhere on Wikipedia. Yeah? The difference is, doesn't drag you in, doesn't keep you there, doesn't kind of loop you into more and more and more, and when you leave, it doesn't drag you back. So I think the balance that Matt's looking for is actually around the addictive bit and the bullying bit and the extending your use by more and more extreme, and by introducing you to loads of other people who may be inappropriate. It's all around that bit. It's not actually around the content at all.
Matt, do you want to come back?
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. It is that addictive element of it, the continual scrolling. There's a never ending. You go on Facebook, your feed will never end. And even as adults, you can go on there, be it Facebook, TikTok, etc., and just an hour's disappeared, and that's in your work time, and you think, where's that gone? And you can't draw yourself off it as an adult, let alone a child.
Matt, you've just done yourself in with your employer there.
No, theoretically.
But thank you for agreeing nonetheless.
Yeah, it's really difficult, but I believe if there is any control element, it should be that's placed upon certainly this scrolling nature of apps. There should be some type of limit on how much it scroll, or something that just stops. That there's an end game to it where that it stops. My son would just scroll for hours if you didn't stop him, and he wouldn't even know what time he started or stopped.
Yeah. Okay, Matt, thank you very much. Is that even possible to say, say Instagram, when they see that I've been scrolling for half an hour, there's a mechanism that says, no, you've done enough now?
Yeah, oh God, yeah. That's easy.
So it's technically possible to do.
Technically easy peasy that. I would argue that Instagram itself should be less addictive, and it should be less, it should be rated according to how addictive it is. But absolutely you can get half an hour and off.
Okay, Sophie in Fulham says, I'd like to ask Biban, should you be checking your teenage boy's phone, i.e. on TikTok, Snapchat, messages, etc.? At what age can you monitor the phone till before it turns into prying into your teen's life? It's very difficult to check in on a 16-year-old's phone, and also they can tell you can they tell that you have? This in turn makes a problem with trust, and then they don't share with you. That's the nub of the whole problem, isn't it?
It is, and it's such a genius question, and it's such a difficult issue. I'm going to, my son, who is now a grown adult and will probably kill me for mentioning him, but when he was a teenager many, many years ago, I did a sort of a deal with him, and I said, I'll never look if you never wipe your history. And we somehow got through, on that trust basis. But I do think it's difficult.
Did you ever look?
No, I didn't. But I think, more importantly, I think you can talk to your son or your sons. I couldn't work out whether it was more than one, and say you want to trust, but trust depends on certain sorts of behaviour. And that's actually being able to put down the phone. It means, coming in and saying hello and saying good night, leaving the phone out at night, et cetera, so that before the use becomes problematic, that you've got rules of engagement. I also think there's a lot of things you can do as a family, together using tech. And I think that is, to get your teenagers to play a game with you, to make Spotify lists, to use it in shared ways, because so much of the research shows that part of the problem is the isolation. So actually, if kids are doing something together offline, and I know a lot of young people who put like a basket by the door and they put all the phones in, and then they actually talk to each other. And some of them actually had to write little prompts and so on to get off, to get off the phone and start knowing how to relate and so on. But I think as a family, as teenage groups, you have to talk about that stuff. My job is to make the regulation better, but it absolutely is everybody's job to talk about it with their kids.
And also to teach kids how to talk, because I notice, obviously I work with a lot of young people here, and I've noticed that there is a tendency now to use WhatsApp as the primary form of communication rather than making a phone call.
I think that's absolutely right. And I think, I noticed at a certain point that young people started telling me that they don't ring on the doorbell. They text from the front door, and I found that bewildering. It's hardly the worst thing we're going to discuss tonight. But I think that the social anxiety related to social media is something that we should all be alert to, because people always say, the good and the bad. We can have the good. We can have the search and find information. We can actually text each other and say we're running late. We can have all that without the bad. And I think that what's being said there about trust is so fundamental, because if you start tracking your kids, it doesn't make them any safer. If you start distrusting them about what they're doing, it doesn't help them self-regulate. So somewhere along the line, you've got to make a deal.
John says, a concerned but online safety active parent of 3. As a child of the 90s, I'm more than aware that nothing has really changed over the last 30 years. The predators and online bullies were there back in the chat rooms, MSN Messenger, remember that? And Habbo Hotel days. I've no idea what that is.
I do.
Days of yore. Parents, what have I missed out on there? Parents now have a huge responsibility to be clued up. Our parents are not, but access to things online is so much easier. Also, the grown-ups lurking online have more practice. There are plenty of tools that can be used to control online activity. There's also need for some common sense here on screen time and what your children are up to. Speak to them, take an interest, and be vigilant and aware.
Listen, John makes loads of good points, and I would obviously agree with all of them. I think the only additional thing I would say is parents sometimes come to me and say, is this okay, and is that okay, and is the other okay? And I always say to them, there are so many services and apps out there. I can't give you the perfect ones. But what you can do is look at the features. So if there's live streaming, if there's friend recommendations, if there's direct messaging, those things are inherently unsafe for children. Because you're bringing strangers together. You're taking them off public spaces into private spaces, or you're broadcasting them to millions from the bedroom. So if you look at the features and actually choose things that are a little bit less exposing, those are the things about the sort of the more predatory dangers. And then, as a couple of people have said, and I agree with, the biggest thing is the opportunity cost. If you're always scrolling, if you're always looking at somebody else's life on Instagram, you're not living your own life. And so the biggest thing is to actually encourage kids to have other kind of hobbies, other kind of activities. And there's some fantastic research come out of America that says the best way to well-being in a child is actually to have a different hobby, to have something that they want to do. And strangely, it could even be an online hobby, like, making music with someone in Japan, yeah? But so long as it's a hobby, so long as it's intentional. And I think that what people miss is that actually the intentional use of digital products is normally fine, yeah? It's the endless time that actually allows them to dictate what it is you're consuming.
Right, let's take a short break and we'll come back with more calls and messages for BBAN in just a moment. It's 9:47.
Coming up at 10 on LBC, Ben Kentish.
Warnings today about the impact the war in Iran will have on our energy bills and mortgage rates, but is it worth the cost? Plus, should the King cancel his visit to the US in protest at Trump?
Ben Kentish at 10. Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
The Hillary sale ends soon, so get window-wise and grab these amazing offers while you still can. Like up to 50% off hundreds of made-to-measure blinds, curtains and shutters. Plus, grab £50 off your electric blind order and conveniently control your blinds for less. And don't forget, with Hillary's, measuring and fitting is always included. So get window-wise and book your free in-home appointment today at hillarys.co.uk. But hurry, the Hillary sale ends on the 9th of March. Conditions apply.
You are not an egg. You should not be put in a box. But when it comes to retirement advice, that's how some people get treated. Put in a one-size-fits-all box. Not at Fisher Investments UK. We work with you to create a personalised retirement plan. Fisher Investments UK. Retirement advice that's as individual as you are. Learn more at fisherinvestments.co.uk. Investing involves the risk of loss. Fisher Investments UK is regulated by the UK Financial Conduct Authority.
It's hard to concentrate when you're worried about your health. It can feel like there's a wall between you and the rest of the world. Like you can't be fully present.
Hello, AXA Health. How can I help?
At AXA Health Insurance, we build our teams with people who care. So when you need us, we're here to support you. For cover that cares, search AXA Health Insurance. Pre-existing conditions are not covered.
Jay here knows that Zoopla can provide valuations for any home in the UK, so we can see what that new couple across the road might have paid.
Ooh la la.
Have a nose at what the curtain twitchers next door could sell for. And even see what his own place is worth.
Cool, look at that.
Plus, Zoopla lets you find and compare local estate agents if you do decide to sell up. Think of all those new neighbours you'll be able to snoop on, Jay. If you want to know, just ask Zoopla.
This is LBC with Iain Dale. Call 0345 6060 973.
9:49. Just before we go back to the calls, let's get your thoughts, Biban, on the role the regulator is playing in all of this. Now, this morning, my LBC colleague Nick Ferrari spoke with Ofcom's chief executive Melanie Dawes. Ofcom has fined 6 companies for things like not putting the proper age checks in place on their sites, but it doesn't sound like they're managing to get those firms to actually pay up.
What's the amount that has been levied in fines?
It now totals, it's over £3 million.
And our biggest fine is £1.35 million, which went out just recently. And of course, these are quite small companies, so that's quite a punchy amount in relation to their total turnover.
Yes, indeed. And of those £3 million, how much has actually been paid? How much has Ofcom
We've had
received?
one fine paid so far.
Well, how satisfied are you with that?
Well, look, we will see how much payment we get, and you wouldn't expect them all to have been paid already. I think the important thing about fines is the deterrent message that they send as well across the wider industry.
Deterrent if I'm fined and I don't pay?
Well, it's still quite a big deal, actually. If you're a company that's non-compliant with the regulator in the UK, we do quite often find that companies contest their fines. They may want to go through a legal process to challenge us, which is why, as I say, at this stage, it's not a number that worries me. And the important thing is that deterrent effect. So we've seen a lot of companies decide to just withdraw their service from the UK because they'd rather do that than introduce the safety protections for the public that we're asking for.
I mean, our understanding is that you've had one fine paid of £55,000.
Yeah, that's right.
From an Italian company, if we've got that correct. We're talking with firms such as Meta, who has an annual revenue of $201 billion. Alphabet, you'll know for YouTube, $400 billion. It's an accounting error, isn't it?
Well, the point I've already made is that actually the fines are proportionate to the size of the company.
Now, the Technology Secretary, Liz Kendall, then joined Sheila Fogarty here on LBC this afternoon and said those fines should be paid.
I expect Ofcom to enforce this, and if the fines aren't paid up, we'll see what further action we need to take, because companies who want to act here have to obey the rule of the law here, and I expect the money.
If you don't get the money, is it time to look again at using Ofcom for this? Is it not time for the teeth and the levers of government to get more involved?
Well, there's two things. One is that Ofcom not only has the power in law to fine companies up to 10% of their qualifying worldwide revenue if they repeatedly fail to abide by the law, but they also have what's called business disruption measures. Essentially, Ofcom can apply to the court to make sure those services aren't available in the UK if those companies repeatedly refuse to abide by the law. But, if they don't pay up those fines, I'm obviously prepared to look at what more government could do to make sure we get that money back, because the law of the land needs to be enforced in our land.
Biban, what's your reaction to that? Because it seems incredible to me that a regulator that fines £3 million has only recovered $55,000.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I listened to both of those interviews and I was not happy about her being happy about that number. That was not good. But I think it speaks to my earlier point that fines are not the answer. Now, I think there's two things I would pick out here. She said these are very small and very extreme companies, and she doesn't mind if they're blocked or if they're fined, and if and if they go offshore, that's great. And I would agree with her on that. Yeah, if actually they want to give extreme porn to kids and they're not willing, or they're a suicide network, then we don't want them here if they're not willing to play ball. So in that sense, I think it's fine. I think there's a bigger issue here, which is, the police are writing to me about TikTok. We've talked about Meta. Somebody's rung up about roadblocks. We want these big companies to change root, branch and root, root and branch, and she was talking about the difficulty of getting them to have a culture change. And I've urged the regulator to be much more robust and say, we are investigating this company. This is what we think they've done. Put it out there in the public thing and don't do it all.
Right, let's go to Lashmi, who's been very patient in Cardiff. Hello, Lashmi.
Hi, Nick again. How are you?
Hi, it's Ian, not Nick.
Oh, sorry. I'm so sorry.
That's all right. I've been called worse.
I'm quite tired after my shift today. I'm actually a GP in Cardiff, and I happen to be on the Welsh Council of the RCGP, which is the Royal College of GPs. And my colleague, Rowena Christmas, published a paper literally January of this year, and it's entitled Digital Harms Are a Modern Detriment of Health and a Population Health Issue. And there's a subsection in there that states the RCGP's position on digital harms and children. So I just wanted to point out that from a primary care perspective, we've seen huge rises in the number of appointments for this exact problem. Children coming in, having social media affecting them, having mental health issues, self-harming. We have seen the RCGP's position has recognised as a UK council the huge impact it is having on our population for adults and children. You can just Google RCGP digital harm, and it's a very short summary of her article, and it's fantastic. Just a quick read and some of the suggestions that the UK have, said there. It's a massive medical issue as well. It's formally recognised, and I personally have seen so many adolescents, adults, all of the population come and directly saying that their mental health is because they've seen X, Y, and B on social media of some description.
Thank you so much for pointing out that piece of work. And I have to say, I chaired many of the Royal Colleges, a meeting of many of the medical Royal Colleges, and the message could not have been clearer. This is a public health emergency. We're not taking it seriously enough. Government are too coy, too slow, not robust enough. And actually, medical professionals want better support in what they're seeing in the front line. And I will say, in the time I've been fighting about this, the frontline workers, GPs, teachers, lawyers, people who kind of get social workers, the people who see children when it absolutely hits, keep on saying, what are we waiting for? Why doesn't government believe the evidence? And I think that there's not enough lived experience in this conversation and too much cautiousness amongst civil servants and academics.
Let's try and fit in Tom, his first time caller in Colchester. Tom, we haven't got a lot of time left.
Yeah, I'll try and make it as quick as I possibly can, mate. Ultimately, last year I got a phone call from British Transport Police that they were on the way up north to speak to my then 13-year-old daughter, obviously ultimately petrified. Turned out she'd been groomed on Snapchat by a then 17-year-old lad in London who had 15 charges put against him once. He got lifted on a train exposing himself by British Transport Police, which is why they were involved. Went through all his PEDs, his electronic devices, and found a lot. 15 charges against him, 3 of them which involved my daughter. And I think there was about another 4 or 5 girls involved. It's quite an hard story to tell, but I think the big thing is getting the awareness out there, because like you've already spoke about like whether you go through their phones and stuff when they're teenagers, it's such a hard subject to broach with your kids. And ultimately, she's come out of it the other end quite okay, as we think. But ultimately, this could be something that could affect her in whether it be 5 months' time, 5 years' time, 10 years' time. No idea how it's going to affect her. Because ultimately, what he did was his MO was to Snapchat maps, which basically sort of like comes up with an emoji. He would hover over like all girls' schools and grammar schools and then start chatting to them. Originally, we told our daughter that she wasn't to have location settings on it, but naturally she switched it on without our knowing.
I'm really sorry, but time has beaten us. Biban, thank you for joining us over the last hour. We'll have you back again very soon. Before we finish, Donald Trump is currently speaking to reporters in Florida. He's just said that the US Air Force and Navy have hit more than 5,000 Iranian targets and have destroyed 51 Iranian ships so far. Thanks for all of your calls and messages this evening. I'll be back tomorrow from 7. Coming up at 1 on LBC, it's Richard Spur. But right now, Ben Kentish.
Ian, thank you very much indeed. Hello there. A very, very good evening to you this Monday night. Welcome to Late Nights with Ben Kentish. On the show,
a rapid de-escalation in the Middle East remains the best way to protect us from rising energy bills.